unapologetic, unadulterated, and uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the super fortress of intelligent black thought. Tonight, calling in reinforcements, this is the BlackChannel.net radio. I am, of course, your host, your brother, your humble servant, Mr. Jason Black. And tonight we are joined by the 5-star Admiral of Intelligent Black Society in the B1 Brigade, Professor Black Truth. Welcome back to the Black Channel, brother.
B1 family.
And this is, of course, the BlackChannel.net radio. Now, brother, a lot's happened since you were last here. We launched 7 a.m. And in addition to that and everything else that's going on, brother, first of all, before we get started on anything here tonight, I would like to acknowledge the passing of, I don't think that you can call him anything other than an absolute icon, Dr. Joseph Ben Yakanan is no longer with us and will always be with us. And I'm a person who is a firm believer that real heroes like Dr. Ben, real heroes do not die. Real heroes transmogrify into something beyond mortal man. They transform into an idea. And Dr. Ben is not dead. He is now more powerful, more influential, more absolute than he's ever been. If I took one thing from the life and the work of Dr. Joseph Ben Yakanan, it is that this man was uncompromising. And we'll be talking about that tonight in a day and an age where black people have compromised everywhere and compromised everything. This man refused to bend and refused to bow. And because he didn't do it, now the rest of us know how to do it today. We know how. And I am sad to say that Dr. Ben, unfortunately, sacrificed everything he had for a people who are as yet unworthy of his sacrifices, but he did it in the hopes that one day they would be. That one day we would stop thinking about pyramids and hoping they'll give us a pass, and that one day we would once again begin building pyramids. Why? Because we are the only ones who can. And that is what his life was about. So we have gone from witnessing Dr. Ben's life to being a part of it now. One of our last links to the old order, and as a people, we should be grateful and honored that we could count someone like Joseph Ben Yakanan amongst our ranks. We should be honored that we are able to do that. Professor Truth, I know that you are a long-time follower, devotee, student of Dr. Ben. Of course, the people will be wondering, what are your thoughts on this transitioning of an era?
We have not merely lost one of our greatest minds. We lost an entire way of life. We lost the uncompromising academic. And the king is truly dead, and he has no successors. I remember watching a video with Dr. William Mackey, and one of the things he was pointing out was that the old guard was dying out. And as they were dying out, he saw no one to take their place. He said it would be something like 20 years before there would be others. He said this or close to 2000. Here we are 15 years later. I'm still not seeing the successors. A bunch of ghetto scholarship by individuals who ain't never been to Egypt, or if they did, they went and took the penny tour. Dr. Ben was revolutionary in that he did the actual spade work, the pick and shovel work. So when it came time to debate, he wasn't quoting from a book written by some white person. He was quoting from what he actually saw. He established a brand new standard. A standard that too many of his contemporaries and damn near all of his successors have failed to meet. Dr. Ben believed not in talking about it, but in being about it. And it cost him a lot. I mean, when you have a brother who had the doctorate and then gave a lecture where he said, if you want your freaking pigskin back, you can have it. You couldn't find a Negro who would say that today. You let some university give them a doctorate, even an honorary one. What a contradiction in terms that is. Like Bill Cosby, man, he'll fight to the death for white supremacy. Not Dr. Ben. As far as he was concerned, and he's put it beautifully, he said, I used them to get what I needed, and after that, I was done with them. Now, that's the way you do it. He was not one of these eternally grateful Negroes. How many of you have the steel that it would take to go to a foreign land where you didn't know anybody? And if you got shot at or shot, and both things happened to Dr. Ben, would sit there and say, I will not be moved. Most of y'all, pretty much all of y'all, you'd be on the first thing smoking back home. Not Dr. Ben. After he got patched up, he was back at it. And this is why we must honor this man. We have to honor him. Because if we don't, then what we are saying is that those who shed their blood for their people, those who give up everything, and he did give up everything for a people who were unworthy, let's just say it. Instead of Dr. Ben being an international bestseller, the man spent the last 20 years of his life struggling. This is a sin, a blight on us that we will not be forgiven for. Because there ain't a white propagandist out there who would not have every white businessman, every white citizens group, every white political action committee trying to put something together for them. Few presidents were as irrelevant as Harry Truman. The man was an idiot and an incompetent commander-in-chief. But when those good white folks saw him struggling after he left the presidency, they established the idea of a presidential pension. Because the white people understood that it attacked the dignity and the prestige of the nation when a former leader is seen struggling. That's the reason why the presidential pension exists. Yeah, you can put in 4 years of work, most of it sipping martinis while you get donations from billionaire fat cats. And when it's all said and done, they will pay your set for life no matter how dumb you are. See, that's what white supremacy understands. They understand that if you sit there and back the cause of the white man's march across the globe, then they got to take care of you so they can incentivize the next generation and the next and the next. They understand the way that power works. The stick is what you do to the disobedient, but the carrot is how you make people obedient. Money moves people. They understand. Dr. Ben's people do not. And that is why, though I am proud of his life, why I am glad that he lived it uncompromisingly, there's a part of me that says if only he had a people who were as virtuous as he was. If only he had a people who were as dedicated to the cause of black empowerment as he had been. Dr. Ben said it himself, and these hotep hunky-dory fools could stand to listen. He said it's not enough to simply say hotep if you don't know what comes after it. Yes, Dr. Ben was a historian, but he never let his crusade stop at the classroom. Not even once. This man left it all on the table. He left it all. His people owed him better than that. But I'm not going to spend too much time heaping scorn on a people who refuse to support those who supported them. It would be impossible for me to put into words just how influential Dr. Ben and his books and his teachings have been to me personally. I remember, a long while back. I probably saw back when I was living in a different place than I'm living in now. I think I might have seen a replay of some of Dr. Ben's interviews on Like It Is with Gil Noble. And I'll tell you right now, at the time, it didn't sink in to me that this man was sitting here showing us a way forward. It was just a matter of, here's a guy talking about African history. Here's a man who's sitting here saying that we cannot afford to take crumbs from the white man's table and we got to build our own. See, when you're a teenager, you don't quite understand these things. But now that I'm out here in the big bad world, and now that I am trying to continue the work that this man did, I see just how hard his road was. I see what this man had to deal with on a daily basis. And that just deepens my respect for him. Because this was a man who already had the credentials. He was already inside the walled city. He could have pulled a Skip Gates. He could have very easily said, all this black empowerment stuff, well, I better go light on it. Just enough to have my street cred. But no. And when they told him, you better not come back on this university campus, I think it was Cornell, he said, so be it. I'm taking my case to the people anyway, and most of them ain't here to begin with, so you ain't hurting me. And all I could remember thinking is, that's the way you do it. That's the way it's done. Now, with the passing of Dr. Ben, we have certainly suffered a great loss. And future generations are going to judge us harshly for the fact that we didn't support this man more. So what are we going to do to redeem ourselves? I'm talking to intelligent black society now. What are we going to do to redeem ourselves for the crime of not having made Dr. Ben and his upkeep and his legacy and his prestige a priority amongst ourselves? What are we going to do to atone for this? Perhaps we could do some lectures. Perhaps we could pass out some bean pies. I know. Perhaps what we will do is we're going to go ahead and have a book telling people about how Egypt was the foundation of all religions. And to do so is to betray what Dr. Ben was about. He taught history as a means to an end, not an end unto itself. Telling black people where we had been was supposed to be the light to lead us where we were going to go. And in his passing, you don't have the ability to sit there and swing off of his coattails. Now the question falls on you. Dr. Ben and John Henrik Clark and Chancellor Williams, a handful of black men, started all of this. There's supposed to be something of an army now. And I do believe that we have that brigade. We got that core group. But you got to get off the sidelines. Dr. Ben didn't sit there and say, well, Arthur Schomburg, good for him, he did his part. And Drusilla Dungy Houston, she did her part. And George G.M. James, he sat there and looked at that and said, you know what, we got to take it to the next level. We got to go to the next step. And he did. But looking just at Jason Black's page, there were people who were actually in intelligent black society saying, Jason, you should do a video about ... This is part of the reason why you all haven't heard from me in such a long while. My inbox usually, about every week, I get about 5 to 6 requests from people saying, you should do this, you should do that. And I'm sitting here going, that's amazing. These people have not listened to anything that we had said. Our words were lost on them. Now, before my hiatus, I gave you guys the example of how white supremacy was willing to wait and bide their time and patiently build. When Richard Nixon got kicked out of office, those who had supported him did not sit there and say, how are we going to influence the media? They said to hell with influencing the media. We need to own the media. And starting in the mid-'70s, you saw the buying and acquisition and creating of right-wing media outlets. The Moonies established the Washington Times. Rupert Murdoch began his little escapades. Sinclair Media Group, Clear Channel, Republican right-wingers all. And between 1974 and 1989, when an unknown water boy for the Kansas City Royals named Rush Limbaugh came on the scene, that's 15 years that they looked for an infrastructure that would be viable. And radio was what was the one that they went to because it was already a pre-existing structure. It was cheap, and because everybody had access to it. Hence began the right-wing takeover of AM radio. But it still took 15 years before they found their stalking horse, before they found the guy who had finally cracked the code. 15 years from Nixon's ouster until Rush Limbaugh and his ilk came along trying to do their rehabilitation of the Southern strategy and all that other nonsense. Now, from Rush Limbaugh until Fox News was another 10 years. White supremacy is vicious. White supremacy is cruel. White supremacy is ultimately self-destructive, but the one thing you got to give them credit for, they are patient. They know how to play the long game. It was 25 years between Richard Nixon's ouster and the rise of Fox News. And why do I mention Fox News? Who is the head of the Fox News channel? Roger Ailes. Who is Roger Ailes? A former Nixon administration official. He was one of the young Republicans back then, and there was also another young Republican in the Nixon administration. He was one of the young college Republicans on the stump trying to get people to vote against their interests. His name, Karl Rove. You might want to go back and watch some of those old documentaries dealing with the Nixon years and the Republican infrastructure. You'll see a lot of familiar names. See, the bad guys were willing to work 15 years before they finally had cracked the code. They were willing to wait 25 years before they had solidified and aggregated the conservative right-wing flunky base enough where they could look and say, we got a foundation that will beat CNN, beat MSNBC 25 years. But it wasn't 25 years of sitting around. It wasn't 25 years of looking left and right and going, somebody else going to do it? It was 25 years of working, 25 years of building, of acquisitions, of aggregation. They stood on the sidelines at first just trying to toot the horn. Does anybody hear this thing? Is this thing working? Then when Limbaugh came on the scene, they said, we got our front man. Now we have a voice that we found a particular voice that the people will listen to. And then in came the clones. Oliver North, G. Gordon Liddy, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, Neil Bortz, Bill Bennett. See, Jason established the blackchannel.net as a haven. He established it as a safe zone. But it is also supposed to be a launch pad. A lot of y'all out there saying, well, can't you guys do some videos? Yeah, we could, but that's not the way that you grow this thing. You're looking for leaders. Better yet, you're looking for entertainment. I'm not going to entertain you. We said 6 years ago, when we started the blackchannel.net radio, we said that this was not politically oriented entertainment. It is a witness and a warning. Now it's our last best chance to try to gather the people before we're destroyed. So if the bad guys are willing to spend 15 years before they find somebody who puts forward a viable model that they can use, and 25 years before they're ready to go on a counteroffensive, how much time are you willing to spend? Are you willing to spend a year to invest in yourself? Are you willing to go ahead and dip your toes in the waters? We all get frustrated and angry at the fact that every time we look up and some redneck gets out there and says that all the black people should be wiped out, and they got media people supporting them, we sit there and say, man, look at all these keyboard Klansmen supporting them. Yeah, you want to know why? Because they're used to being active. They are used to being active because they know that that's the way that it works. You don't sit on the sidelines. Now, I made the mistake one time of listening to one of these conscious debates, and I'll get to that in a moment, but during this debate, I couldn't help but notice that the guys who organized the debate also made it a point that they were going to cheer and try to shout down the guys on the other side, as they called it, stacking the deck. Now, that's some of that street corner hustle stuff, but it does have a very strong, deep root in group psychology. Most people, sorry to say, are sheep. They will follow. Whatever Pied Piper comes along, they will follow. And the truth be told, they're not going to stick their heads up. They're apathetic. They will just go along. So, if you make it a point that you are going to scream and yell and hoop and holler, you can get a lot of people to back down just based on that. Don't believe it? Look at the 2000 election. Here you had a bunch of angry white males in Washington banging on the doors at the election commission saying, "Let us in." Well, when they let you in, what are you going to do? They were banging and screaming and yelling. Many of them, it turned out, were being whipped up by only a handful of white guys, most of them on the payrolls of the very right-wing conservative organizations that put George Bush on the ballot in the first place. They know the value and the power of having people who are not going to allow their mouthpieces to stand alone. They know the power of a group all saying the same thing. Because if enough people say the same thing loud enough and long enough, damn it, it will be heard. And this is where black people fall down. We fall down. Because unfortunately what happens is we tend to gravitate to a particular person and then we sit down. And then we have some ridiculous nonsense later on where somebody says, we need another Malcolm. We need another Huey Newton. My answer to that is, what happened to the last one? You let him get killed. Now, revolutions will suffer losses. But the question then becomes, if you had one Malcolm, why weren't there 100 others who arose behind him in his wake? There were not. Malcolm was killed, and the black empowerment that he represented went dormant for nearly 2 generations. Until Spike Lee made his movie, then all of a sudden X was everywhere again. Now, the reason that I take you through this little historical excursion is so that you understand. Dr. Ben happens to be, or rather, I say happens in the present progressive, but Dr. Ben is one of the strongest voices that we've got. And that being the case, when he died, it says nothing about him. All men die. But the question now becomes, what on earth are his successors doing? If we look around and see that there are no successors, then that says everything about us. What it says is that Dr. Ben may well have died for nothing. He may well have fought for nothing. Because if he gets shot at and gets exiled and loses his livelihood and is demonized, marginalized, and that being the case, his people do not rise up in his defense. He sees nothing from them, hears nothing from them, they do nothing for him. Then what is he fighting for? Sad to say, we may well have created the conscious community because we did not give a viable alternative. By not giving people something to say yes to, then they just fell for anything.
I was telling people about that earlier here this week, as a matter of fact, brother, about the fact that as we've watched this week and there has been a full-blown Sambo Stampede that has occurred. I was witnessing this and I was watching this and I was saying to people that, there's a real problem. There is absolutely a real problem when you're seeing this kind of thing occur. You're seeing this kind of thing happen, and the reason why these people feel so emboldened, they feel so emboldened to be able to do something like this, like they've been doing. They feel so emboldened to do that because they realize something. They realize that the rest of black society does not have the tools or the infrastructure in place with which to punish them. And because we do not have the necessary infrastructure in place with which to punish them, then they see absolutely no reason that they should sacrifice anything at all. As Professor Truth just stated to you, you can't fight a something with a nothing. You can't do that. You can fight a something with a something, but you can't fight a something with a nothing. It doesn't work that way. The only way that you're going to fight a something is if you brought another something. That's the only way that you are going to be able to do that. You are going to have to fight a something with a something. And we as a people have failed to do this. We have failed to fight that something with a something. We haven't done that. And because we haven't done that, we have been completely and thoroughly unable to disarm these people. We can talk about it, but we are unable to disarm them. And it is a shameful thing when you find yourself in a position where you are needing to disarm your enemies and you are unable to. That is a shameful position to be in. Absolutely shameful. That leads to a situation where your very dignity is sacrificed. You have to turn on your televisions and turn on your radios and hear yourselves being disrespected. And you're having to tolerate that because you have not put an infrastructure in place that actually honors your people. There was a video that was playing earlier this week, and at first I thought it was a joke. At first I had thought that, well, surely people must be lying about this. There's no way that this could be real. And sure enough, I checked into it, and not only was it real and worse than we really could have imagined, to be totally honest. It was real and worse than we could have imagined. In a day and age where we shouldn't have anybody speaking against us, in a day and age where you shouldn't be able to pay people to be able to do that kind of thing, not only is it happening now, but now they are becoming an unprecedented type of bold. They are becoming an unprecedented type of bold is what they're doing. Because people are hedging their bets in the 21st century. They're hedging their bets. And I'm telling you that they're actually hedging their bets against their own people. This is Terrence Howard from, I believe, Access Hollywood. And he's talking to two white hosts. And when the guy throws the bait out there, take a look at how he responds. You can listen for yourselves.
I'll be honest, if I didn't use it with my son, I diverted back into judging each other by the color of our skin and making excuses because things has happened in our life. So we need to address it straight up and down. And as long as we keep calling each other along the way, we're going to treat each other like that.
What does the N-word mean to you, though?
Oh, it could mean love. Sometimes it's a noun. Sometimes it's a verb. Sometimes it's an adjective. Sometimes it's all, there's a spirit attached to it, So my dad uses it. My brothers use it. I use it. I'm sitting there hoping that maybe I won't use it with my son, but I don't know if I'll be honest if I didn't use it with my son. My friends use it. I call my white friends, what's up, my that's it. It has taken on this term to us, but it's blown out of proportion outside the world. So I don't know.
I think the great Cornel West, I was watching something, Cornel West was saying that one day, he says, that word cannot be used until every bit of malicious intent, is drained from it.
Well,
which I thought was interesting. And then he says, it's common property.
Yeah, well, everybody, when I use it, no, but some of my white friends that I've grown up with, that I talk to on a daily basis, when they use it, it doesn't have any malintent associated with it. It's just a noun now. It's an adjective. It's an adverb. It describes a moment, describes a feeling. It no longer describes a state of a race or a human being.
How does Lee Daniels feel about it? Is he with you, or is he sort of... he's got a tough line to walk here.
Yeah, Lee, I don't know. When me and him talk to each other, we use it on a daily basis. Our texts, this is what we use. And whether Lee gets mad about this or anybody gets mad, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
The word is used. So if one person can use it, then everybody should use it. But if white people use it, you got to remember to take the ER off of it. And if somebody got a problem on how I feel about it, they can kiss my Ooh, that's how I feel.
Terrence, we're only halfway there. We're going to take a quick...
And that's the caliber of what you have to tolerate today. As black people, the reason why you are being subjected to those indignities is because we have not shown anybody anywhere that we are willing or capable of being able to stop this kind of thing. We have shown them that we are not willing or capable of being able to stop them. And because we haven't done that, it's now proving impossible for you to maintain any level of dignity anywhere. That's what's happening to you now. That's what's happening to you now. When you have a situation where people are no longer afraid to actively talk to you like that in public, they're no longer afraid to actively assault you, defame you, impugn you, insult you in front of the masses. They're no longer afraid to do that. Don't you understand how dangerous the situation has gotten for you? Don't you understand how dangerous that really is? Because once you have a situation where people are not afraid to speak against you, it's not going to be very long before they decide to, hey, we can just go ahead and open up, and we don't even have to speak anymore. We can go ahead and just open up on you now. Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we do that? Why shouldn't we do that at all? One of the methodologies that I established here on the Black Channel was that I teach people how to treat us. I teach them how to treat us. And I teach them how to treat us by way of insisting on a code of conduct. And because we have this code of conduct here, because we have that here, we're able to actually insist on that. We become a stronger place here because we actually do insist on a code of conduct. We actually do insist on that. You've got Raven Simone. You've got Common. You've got Terrence Howard. And I want to know exactly how far are you going to allow that to go? Professor Truth, is it just our imaginations, brother, or is this in fact transforming into the Coon Stampede?
Absolutely, it's real. It is real as it can be. All you have to do is say, I ain't got a problem with white people calling me a nigger. They'll put you on every station imaginable. All you got to do is get out there and say black people are responsible for their own problems. The Negro needs to pull himself up by his bootstraps. That's an old one that Terrence Howard was sitting there regurgitating. We need to deal with ourselves first, you know. This sounds just like old Sheena Howard from a couple of weeks. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say Dr. Howard. Gotta put that doctor on there. She gets very sensitive when you don't call her doctor. As Dr. Howard said, we've got many problems. Then we ask what the problems are. Racism, racism, racism. Yeah, you know, I think that when you get your Screen Actors Guild card, you also get a lifetime pass on the Coon train, too. I'm starting to think that now. That's what I'm starting to believe. So Terrence Howard, who got himself booted off of the Iron Man franchise, I guess he figured, hey, you know, I'm a guy in my 40s. I don't get too many chances. I better let these white folk know that I'm going to go along with it. I did a video talking about Ike Perlmutter, the owner of Marvel Comics, the guy who actually owns the thing. And he was quoted as having said that it didn't matter who they replaced Terrence Howard with because all black people look alike. That lets you know the character and caliber of people who run the media. The people who were signing Terrence Howard's paycheck on that first Iron Man movie. He was the highest paid actor on the first Iron Man movie. And then when all he said was, look, you thought I was good enough to pay me the most the first time. Robert Downey Jr.'s star ain't risen that much. They said, nigga, get out of here. We didn't know we paid you more than him. This sets a bad precedent. Next thing you know, the rest of the niggers will want to get paid. And then Amy Pascal comes out and says, her emails come out where they're sitting here talking about all sorts of greasy, dirty stuff. All sorts of greasy, dirty stuff about President Obama. And all that other garbage about, what's his name, the little comedian. And then you sit there and say, man, I can't believe that Terrence Howard is cooning. What else did you think he was going to do? He knows what side his bread is buttered on. He knows. And he also knows that the people who gave him his career can take it away. This is what happens when you do not have your own media. You wind up having to beg for time on somebody else's. And when you beg for time on someone else's media, they will only give it to you if you say what they want you to say. Don't believe it? Tell me. How many actors have they put up there? How many politicians have they given prime time to who say that we ain't going to let anybody call us niggers and that it's not okay? And Terrence Howard, they sat there and let him just go on and on and on. You let a black man get up there and say it ain't all right, it's not all right to call us niggers, they'll be sitting here interrupting him every 5 minutes. And 5 minutes is all the time that he'll get. And it is not harmless what this guy's doing. This is not a tempest in a teapot. This is not just a freak show of the week. When Terrence Howard gets out there and says it's all right to call us nigger, then what he is doing is he is indirectly saying that those white boys on the bus of Oklahoma University, the SAE fraternity, that they should not have been punished. It ain't too much of a stretch for a white boy to say, well, I wasn't saying nigger, I was saying nigga. They got an excuse for every day of the week and every hour of the day. How the world do you sit there and tell the anchor on the nightly news that he should not be saying nigga when you got a coon train saying that they can? And by the way, that's the next step. The next step is going to be that the official people are going to do it. They're going to do it openly. And just as they tried to use rappers as a smokescreen, they'll be using the coons next. That's the way this is going. And while we're on the subject of blacks in Hollywood, there's just one more thing that I'd like to add. Terrence Howard's got his white wife, and he's got his white child. I'm sorry, not white child. He's got his quadroon, octoroon. He's got his little designer baby with good hair and good skin. Now, after his ride on the coon train is over, after he's been served a couple of chitlins and some hog mogs, that's what they serve in the first class section of the coon train. What's going to happen is it will end for him the same way that it ended for Bill Cosby. It will end with Terrence Howard getting his nigga wake-up call, which will, of course, terminate with him being booted off the coon train. Now, when this comes, the same Terrence Howard who was saying that black people got to get themselves in check first. Black people got to get it together first before we can check anybody else. That same Terrence Howard will be looking for black people to support him and to run interference for him and to shield him from the white people who are going to peel the hide right off him. You know, Tiger Woods used to call himself Cablin Asian. You see, he's a good intersectionalist. He was an intersectionalist before intersectionalism was cool. Tiger Woods considered himself a Cablin Asian. That is, until the white folk showed him that we're holding your card. And the last few years, Tiger Woods ain't been winning so much. I guess when every time you show up on the green, the media immediately reminds everybody, hey, here's that philandering womanizer, you know, the guy who got beat up by his wife. They're sitting here castrating him every chance they get. He ain't been calling himself a Cablin Asian. See, Tiger Woods had to learn the hard way. No, you don't have to call yourself a black man. You don't have to live your life as a black man. Problem is, you can't live it as anything else either. He found that out the hard way. And Raven Simone, you know, who's apparently feeling that she's a lesbian first, she's going to find that out too, same way Star Jones did. Black people have not learned yet that when white people take you as their tool, the white man has had no tool that he has not eventually broken. You can go all the way back to the Romans with that one. The Romans, when they would invade parts of Germania and later Britannia, they would go ahead and get a few of the locals to do their bidding. That's where Boudica came from. Some of y'all might have seen a cheesy little movie with Alex, what's her name, back about 10 years ago. But the part that they left out was that Boudica and her family were collaborators with the Romans. They leave that part out when they tell the story. It's just like talking about William Wallace, you know, Braveheart. Mel Gibson showed him as being a humble son of Scottish peasantry. In fact, he was a son of the aristocracy. His family collaborated with the English lords in Scotland. A lot of people will sit there and talk about Saddam Hussein, but Saddam Hussein carried water for Washington for a generation. And the same thing went in Vietnam. When the white man has you as a tool, eventually he must break that tool. The Haitian Revolution showed what happens when you do not break your tools. Eventually the tools will rise up against you. So that's the reason why, no matter how much money King's World Media gave Oprah Winfrey, in the end, she was always going to be broken. In the end, they had to. Why? Let her sit there and pass that money on? That sets a bad precedent. And I suppose that Terrence Howard thinks he'll be an exception. But he won't. They never are. Will Smith thought that he was going to be an exception. He's found out that he's not. You see that movie Hancock, which clearly Dr. Sheena Watson never saw. That entire movie Hancock was nothing but black emasculation. A black superhero who's a drunk, who doesn't do anything noble. Whenever people see him, they hate him. And what does he do? He meekly checks himself into prison. This is in the movie, by the way. But not before he gives a sniveling, cowardly statement where he just reads this self-flagellating speech where he says, I've been a bad boy. I've been a bad boy. And I know I was bad. So I'm going to go ahead and bend by the master because I know I was bad. I was bad.
Yeah, and what usually happens is when they do that, they find out later that that doesn't work. They do find it out later, though they're not very happy when it does. And as a people, we've been allowing them to do these things. They do find out later that it doesn't work. They find out later it doesn't work. And it's only at that time that they actually do accept that, you know, maybe this will not work out for us. Maybe it won't. I want to suggest a radical position to you all tonight. I want to suggest a radical position that we as a people should have it in our heads that if there is going to be a black 21st century, if there are going to be any black people in the 21st century, then it's going to start with us. It's going to start with us. You don't have a yesterday to call on, people. You don't have it. If you did, you'd already be there. We just buried Dr. Ben, and the reason why is because we as a people have not accepted the dire straits that we actually find ourselves in. Let me ask you again, brothers and sisters, why is it that you think that they were able to do something like that? You all saw that just in the last 2 weeks alone, Intelligent Black Society, we haven't complained about the black media. We are the black media. That we took down Huffington Post. Nobody can tell you that. You got a bunch of other people out there who complain about Huffington Post, complain about Fox News. We are the only ones who actually took them down. And then, because breakfast had just been served, we came back again a few days later after Madame Noir, and they brought in a wonderful non-black young woman to do their dirty work for them, to spread libel and slanderize the name of Malcolm X. And we went to war against them and had them take down their page off Madame Noir in less than 12 hours. That was what we did. That was what we did. And the reason that we were able to do that was because we are the only ones who could, and we realized what our power was as a people. That when it is time to go on the march, you go. But there are a bunch of people who are hedging their bets now. Terrence Howard is showing you all that you thought you were supporting black people before, but he's showing you now that he's on their side. That he is not trying to get off the plantation. He is simply trying to maneuver and negotiate for a different space on the plantation. Now, we have a lot of ground to cover here tonight, and it's going to move really fast. But if you want to call in, the telephone number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. That is your personal access code to the Blackest Radio program in existence today. Professor Black Truth, I had posted up earlier this week, and it was an article about South Carolina women's basketball coach Dawn Staley. And I had posted up a quote that she had made. Because, you see, the NCAA basketball has a rule that basically is a rule against South Carolina and Mississippi, that they can't host championship tournament games, and they've kind of started relaxing the rules that it only applies to games that are not predetermined locations. So that basically gives them the ability to do everything except a championship game. And what you have is Dawn Staley, who is so craven, so cowardly, so low down belly crawling. I guess that's what bedwenching does to you after a little while. Now, she's not even originally from South Carolina, but it didn't take long for her to find her white supremacist wings. You have to understand, people, the reason why you've got this explosion, why you've got this coon explosion, this Sambo Stampede going on right now, the reason for that is because everybody out there on the coonery and buffoonery side of black society understands this is the last call for butter biscuits. This is it. White supremacy is choosing its last round of Negro lackeys. It doesn't need you like that anymore. It doesn't need you like that. And they understand that if they don't forget a coon train, we got coon air. And they realize if they don't get their tickets to fly now, ain't gonna be none. Ain't gonna be none. So they're lined up to grab their tickets now. And Dawn Staley, so desperate to have an NCAA women's basketball championship, so desperate to have a home game, because she tells herself in her head that if they had had a home game, I think it was in the previous tournament or the year before that, that her school would have won. As it is, they played on the road and got beat. It can't just be that they got beat. She's looking for an excuse for why they got beat. And her words, and I'm quoting now, about the Confederate flag and the NCAA's ban on their school playing at home because of it, she said, and I quote, I understand the history here in South Carolina. It's not my history, but it's somebody's history. I think the NCAA ban on Confederate flags prevents us, and it prevents me from doing my job in a place that I choose to call home. If it creates an opportunity for us to not have an NCAA tournament game at home, then yes, I'm offended. She said, it's not my history, but it's somebody's history. Now, this is albeit high yellow, but this is a black female, letting you all know that as far as she is concerned, she will be damned if any of you are going to stand in the way of her getting her Negro trinkets. You are not going to get in the way of her getting a pat on the head. So you see, not being able to play a home game in South Carolina, that offends Dawn Staley. She is offended by that. But the Confederate flag and the blood of millions of dead Africans like herself, that don't matter to her. She's not offended by that. Now, we'll go even farther because, you see, I posted this on Twitter, and you all can let her know if you want to, by the way. You can let Miss Patricia Williams know. Now, I got a response on Twitter practically immediately from somebody named Patricia Williams, and she said, and I quote, I'm quoting here now, people, I'm not making any of this up, I'm quoting. She said, quote, this is a black female now. She said, quote, let the flag fly and work on the hearts, minds, and souls of the people of this state. Let me say that again. This black female, in defense of Dawn Staley's cowardly and disgusting position on the Confederate flag, another black female jumps in and says, let the flag fly and work on the heart, minds, and souls of the people of this state. Now, why on earth would she say something like that? Why on earth would she say words like that? And I'll tell you why she said it. I'll tell you why. I responded to her, so you want to change white racists' hearts? Been trying that 150 years now. What do you have to show for it? To which she responded, sorry you're upset. I've lived in every state and find issues in all. I'm an elected official and love this state. So, her response is, I'm a black politician. And that is the reason why. That's the reason why I can stand up and defend this. If this is the caliber of black politician that you all are voting for in South Carolina, it's no damn wonder that you've made no progress from 1815 to 2015. That is the caliber of individual you're voting for. You are voting for somebody who will openly tell you, yes, I am on the side of white supremacy. Yes, I am on the side of white racists, and I am proud to be so. Now, clearly, she probably thinks that she's bucking and jockeying for a higher position, and she's going to need plenty of white bigots, so she's not going to say anything that offends white supremacy. She will cater to black votes while making it clear to white supremacy, I ain't here to challenge you, I ain't here to threaten you, knows I ain't, knows I ain't. Now, this woman, Patricia Williams, she says she is an elected official. Well, Well, she was correct about that. We went looking for her credentials, and she said check on the state website. Nothing on the state website about her. But when you go looking, and we had to dig deep, but we eventually found it, she is a city council person in the town, not the city, in the town of Brunsford, South Carolina. Population roughly 540. In other words, this woman is city councilman in a town so small, you've got more kids at your local elementary school than this woman has in her entire town. You've got 3 or 4 times more kids at your local high school. Your local high school could literally, if they wanted to, overrun her town before lunch was over. And she's letting you know that she doesn't have a lot of job prospects, she doesn't have a lot of job skills, she doesn't have a lot of job abilities, and she is going to do whatever it takes, including, not just including, but first and foremost, selling her people down the river. So for those of you who are out there on Twitter and whatnot, you can let her know that if she wants to call in, she's very welcome to do so at 646-787-1933, and she can explain to all of us why it is that anybody should vote for her ever again as a black female defending the Confederate flag and trying to trivialize its existence. There is nothing trivial about the American swastika. Absolutely nothing trivial about it. And for someone to attempt to trivialize that is downright disgusting. We're going to see if we can take a couple of phone calls here now. Let me see if I can get caller from 954. You're on live with TBA and Professor Black Truth. Caller from 954, last try, you're on live with the Black Channel. Okay, caller from 954 has been abducted. They may be a little bit stunned, Professor Truth. Caller from 786, you're on live with the Black Channel.
Hello, JC, this is Daniel from Miami.
Okay, what's your name again?
Daniel.
Okay, brother, it sounds like you're fondling yourself with the phone. Can you, like, hold it in one hand and talk to us in the other?
Yes, hello, you can hear me now?
Yeah, we could hear you before. It just sounded like you were rubbing yourself all over and everything with the phone. So I didn't. If you're going to have an orgasmic moment with the receiver, I was going to leave you and the receiver alone for a minute. But, yeah, you're on live with the Black Channel.
Yes, my name is Daniel from Miami.
Okay, you said my name is Daniel from Miami.
From Miami.
From Miami. Okay, brother, you got some gobstoppers in your mouth? Is everything all right?
No, I'm kind of nervous.
You're from the Navy.
Nervous.
You're nervous. Okay, well, don't be nervous. It's just you, us, and a few thousand people.
Yeah. Yes, I was just calling that, to say thank you for your broadcast and everything. And, you know, I appreciate for what you're doing. You know, you really do need knowledge and stuff like and things like that. And I wanted to call and ask you for advice about you know, what I want to do with my life.
Okay, and what was that?
Well, you know, since I was a kid, I always wanted to be a filmmaker, and I wanted like where to start off. And
okay, so you say you want to be a filmmaker.
Yes.
Okay, well, that does come in handy if you do it in the right places. I do know a thing or two about a film. Of course, we just finished 7 a.m. If you want to become a filmmaker, first of all, if you have not studied photography, you may want to at least take a brief course or get studied in it so that you'll understand how your camera works. Because filmmaking is simply the art of taking motion pictures, but you need to learn how to take a picture before you can do motion pictures. So First and foremost, you'd want to start there. Do you have any equipment?
Okay. Do I have what?
Do you have any equipment?
No, I have no equipment at all. Right now, I'm just I study script writing and story, because I know like that's the most important thing to a film is, you know, the story comes first. I have no money for no equipment. My mom, she don't have no money for no equipment.
Okay, you need to get
either.
some. You need to get some money then, brother, for equipment. Otherwise, you're flying blind and depending on other people. You see, as black folk, we are going to have to understand. Robert Rodriguez did not say, "I have a story for El Mariachi," and then go try to panhandle and hold his hand out to other people to fund it. Robert Rodriguez understood that, okay, I've got the creativity, but I've also got to get the technical and mechanical expertise in mind as well. So, brother, you're not going to be able to learn how to be a filmmaker by bumming your way, like bumming off cigarettes. It doesn't work that way. You are going to have to start getting some money together so you can buy your own equipment, starting with a camera and some lenses. Now, I actually have a video on YouTube called Black Men Stop Complaining About Media and Make Your Own. You can see it on my YouTube channel, The Black Authority. You can go there.
Yes,
that video will give you a good primer on what you need to get. You need to start there, brother. It's only going to be a few $1,000s. If you can't get together a few $1,000s, you're not serious about wanting to be a filmmaker or anything else, by the way. If you're looking for other people to pay your way through life, you ain't serious about doing nothing. So it's only a few $1,000s. Follow that video, get that equipment, start there.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Yes, and yeah, you know, I really I like the art, the filmmaking art. You know, every time I go by, like I look at behind the scene videos of films that I like and enjoy, and I try to get so much, you know, knowledge of how they're making and what they do and stuff like that. And I always had that passion for telling stories. And the films that are representing blacks today is, you know, I don't like, you know, Empire and Power and all these other television shows. You know, I find there's no substance to it. And what I really
what it'll take though is it'll be up to you to make something that's actually worth it. Now, who are your favorite film directors that you like?
Well, I'm more into genre filmmaking, so James Cameron, Guillermo del Toro, Steve McQueen.
Okay, now you said you're more into what? You said you're more into what filmmaking?
Like genres, like sci-fi.
Oh, okay.
Adventure, you know, stuff like that. And I do like drama too.
Okay.
My favorite drama director, Martin Scorsese.
Okay.
Steve McQueen.
Well, the thing is, for example, when you name James Cameron and Guillermo del Toro, I mean, these are guys who work behind the camera. These are guys who are very camera heavy. And you're talking about being a filmmaker with no camera. It doesn't work that way. So if you want to play like the big guys, you have to study like the big guys. You have to work like the big guys do. There is no introduction to that. If you want to do what they do, you got to do it how they do it. So the reason why this is all confusing you right now is because you don't have the equipment. You don't have anything to actually utilize and study on. So get that first. Get the equipment first and start studying how to use your camera. And then from there, you will learn how to tell a story with the camera. But it's going to take practice, but you cannot practice on a tool that you do not have. You can only practice with a weapon, with a tool that you possess, not with one that you don't have. So start there. I'll let you have the last word.
Well, thanks. Keep spreading the knowledge. Black first.
Black first, brother. You see, what makes the Black Channel special is that we are a place that is able to do what nobody else is able to do, because when you call us and ask us questions, we actually have answers. Let's go ahead and see if we can take a few more phone calls here. Caller from 972, you're on live with the Black Channel.
Hi, Jason. It's Kim.
Hello, Kim. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to ask a question of you and Professor. Black Truth. Where I struggle is where the disconnect is with even Black people my age, I'm in my 30s, and younger, is that they feel like Blackness does not define them. It's just like they don't identify with being Black. I mean, I have cousins that say, oh, I'm not Black. You know, just the most ridiculous things. They truly identify with whiteness, and I really cannot figure out where that disconnect has happened, and where do you tackle that? And I'm just wondering what you guys' thoughts on that.
Okay, understand something. The reason why you have such dysfunction in Black society, the reason why you have all these people out here who don't have a problem being turncoats and traitors and working directly against their people, the reason why you have that, sister, is because we as Black people do not have a code of conduct, and we do not have that because we do not have an infrastructure in place. We do not have power brokers in place. We do not have people who enforce a code of conduct. Every other community's got that. White, Asian, Arab, Latino. Everybody else has got a community and an infrastructure in place that enforces the code of conduct. In Black society, we put up 3-4 stories just this week of Black women who got their sons hurt, killed, or got themselves put in jail because they wanted to discipline their sons and call the police. You see, in Blacks, in other communities, when there's a problem, they call each other. In Black society, when there's a problem, we call white daddy. We are the only group of people who do not have a code of conduct, and you do not have that code of conduct because you do not have power brokers within your society to enforce it. Now, let me tell, when I did my broadcast that had people yelling and screaming and raving and everything else about Ray Rice, I called it down the line when that happened, that if we were dealing with an intelligent infrastructure, that what would have happened is that Ray Rice would have been called out. Ray Rice, if there was a problem, Janae Rice would have called the big men of the Ravens and the NFL. The men would have pulled his coat and let him know, brother, you're off code. You're off code. And from that point on, you're going to get on the good foot. And if she was out of line, then Janae Rice would have been called to the side. And she would have been invited over to one of them big nice ass houses that them NFL wives got. And 3 or 4 of the women would have let her know, understand something. We got a good thing here in the NFL. We get to live a lavish lifestyle. And we understand that you was raised by hood rat rules, and you got a choice to make now, whether you wish to continue living that way or whether you wish to come into our world. But understand, our world has no room for hood rats who are going to sit and destroy what we got. We got no room for you. So you can become one of us or you can become gone. But you're not going to stay here with Ray Rice and destroy what we got. You see, in white society, that's what happens. You want to know why it is? Let me tell y'all something. Why it is that in white politics, they cheat on their wives and the women stay. And you know why? It's because they have been indoctrinated into the code. They've been indoctrinated into the code. There is a reason that Bill Clinton, with all the messing around he did on Hillary Clinton, he has been waiting 20 years now to see that woman to the White House. And that was because she stayed with him and secured his legacy. And now because, not just for him, but because everybody else saw it, because she upheld the code is now going to uphold her. And now she wants to run for president, and she has the full support of the infrastructure because she has protected the infrastructure. That's what she did. Now, in black society, you got all these people out here wildcatting and freestyling and just deciding we just gonna make it up as we go along. And nobody to punish them when they jump off code. When you do something like this that sabotages the community, somebody's supposed to immediately step in and smash you to let you know you don't do that. But we don't have that. You see, the NFL should be a bastion of black power, but it isn't. They should be sitting there setting the tone for how not just black men, but the nation and the world. They should be reforming the world in a black man's image through the NFL, and they're not. They're all out there to see who can be the fastest buck on Massa's plantation. They could be kings, and instead they've settled to be pawns. And thus they are not power brokers. Michael Jordan could have set him up to enforce a code, and he hasn't. You see, these other people let you know what their code is, but our people don't do that. So our power brokers, even though they are as paltry as athletes or whatever, entertainers, they could do that. We saw what the rappers did after the white corporations started throwing money at them and corrupted them. The code went from black empowerment and conscience to money, clothes, and hoes. That's the code that they live by. That's the code that they're enforcing. I'm sorry, that they live by, rather. Nobody enforces it. But that's the answer, sister. You want to know all these people saying all this greasy mess about us and why they do it and why they think they can get away with it? It's because there is no punishment mechanism. There isn't one. Show me where the punishment mechanism is. You see, in white society, let me tell you all something. In white society, you want to know who enforces the code? Phil Knight enforces the code. That's right. Roger Goodell enforces the code. Bill Gates enforces the code. The president of Reebok and Adidas and Under Armour enforces the code. The president of EA Sports enforces the code. When you get out of line, Tiger Woods, he didn't do anything illegal. They smashed him simply because he was off code and they've been waiting a long time to do it. Ray Rice, Adrian Peterson. You see, black men don't have an enforcement mechanism, but the dominant society does. They've got an enforcement mechanism, and they use it. They will take your endorsements. They will take money out your pockets. Ain't that right, Allen Iverson? Ain't that right, Mike Tyson? They have enforcement mechanisms. Thus, they have tools in place that they can use to craft and mold and steer power to their hands. We don't have that. The people who are financially able to do it simply refuse. They simply refuse because in black society, everybody is trying to figure out how to get that all-important validation. Every man for himself. And this every man for himself mentality is freaking killing us. That's the answer to your question.
And I think what you said was really poignant, being indoctrinated into a code. And I think you're right about that. That starts from when you're a baby, a young child. I mean, because I think the attitudes would be different. I recall Terrence Howard actually being on Oprah many, many years ago, and he was telling a story. I think it was about his grandfather. And his grandfather looked white, but he was married to obviously a black woman. And white men took him and beat him because they didn't approve of him being with a black woman. And just for him, I mean, having that kind of history, having that type of knowledge firsthand, and then you get on television saying it's okay to be called a nigger. I mean, I really can't wrap my brain around black people in this love your neighbor, suffer with dignity type attitude. I mean, it really, I'm confused by it on a daily basis.
Okay, let's be clear about something. That clip of Terrence Howard that you all heard me play, that was not loving your neighbor. And that was not reconciliation. That was, ladies and gentlemen, I got my ass beat after Iron Man, and I am going to do or say anything that I can to set white power at ease. That you have to understand, sister, there's really only two trains of thought out there. That you can gain power by being black, or that you can gain power by appeasing white supremacists. And we can obviously see the route that he took. And how do you appease white supremacists? Well, the first track is what we call cooning. What is cooning? Cooning basically is doing anything and everything you can to show white supremacy that you will never threaten their power in any way, shape, form, fashion, or manner. That is the definition of cooning. You can do it in a goofy way. You can do it in an academic way. You can do it in a physical way. You can do it in a verbal way. You can do it in a nonverbal way. As long as you are demonstrating to white supremacy that you are not now, nor will you ever in the future, you are communicating to them by some means that you will not threaten their power. Boss, you ain't got to beat me. I'm not a threat. That's what they walk in the door doing, is convincing them before they get started even talking, I am not a threat. And that was what you were hearing in that interview. He was sitting across from two white people. And what they were doing was their nigga check-in. We all know about the nigga wake-up call. Well, this was Terrence Howard's nigga check-in. And before you can be let back in, Terrence, this is the big interview. Before you can be let back in, we gotta know. You see, you gotta come out here and wear the dress, Terrence. You've got to wear the dress. We are gonna hit you right between the eyes with this question, and nigga, you better give the answer that we're looking for. And you know that that was exactly what it was, because when he finished doing that, what did they do? They didn't sit there and just say, okay. They didn't sit there and say, oh. The two of them started clapping and applauding when he said that. They were clapping and applauding him, saying that white folk can say nigga, and anyone who doesn't like it can kiss my black ass. They sat there and literally, the two of them started literally applauding him for saying that. You have to understand, Kim, you have to understand something. His answer was not for you. His answer was not for your consumption. You were watching, but that answer that he gave was not for you. It was not for your consideration. You were not the intended audience for that answer. The two people and those like them sitting across from him, that was who that answer was for. He didn't give a damn what you thought. And you know why? Because that's how whores work. They don't care what people ridiculing them think. They only care what their Johns think, because he's the one paying the money. And Terrence knows that there will be no appreciable backlash or punishment mechanism from black society for his doing that.
But TBA, when did white people really stop saying the word nigga? I think that's a gross misconception. They've never stopped. They still say it. All they want us to do is agree with it. But they've never stopped. Let's just be honest. They've never stopped saying it.
Well, they were smart enough to stop using it in public discourse. Look, you're never going to stop somebody from doing something that you don't want them to do if they want to do it. You're never going to be able to do that, and it's silly to think that you can. What you can do is make it where you push them underground with it. And effectively, we had pushed it underground. And now what they're looking for are individuals to give them enough space. And it's not really so. Their goal is not for them to start really using that. Their goal is to use this as a wedge to destabilize black society. To keep confusion going. confusion and dissension and disharmony and discord. That's what it's about. To keep us arguing with each other over these things. So they can't get the mass of society to go along with them. So what they do is they handpick a few of their built, constructed coon clones and then send them out and have them say, they get their mascots together. I mean, do you understand that just in the last couple of weeks, you've had both Terrence Howard and what's her name, Taraji P. Henson, another Hollywood whore, by the way, another black female who is desperate. She would do anything. She would perform any act with anyone, anywhere, in order to get that role on that TV show. And if you don't believe me, you didn't pay no damn attention to Halle Berry. They recruit individuals of weak character and weak will like them. They wouldn't have any use for a female like you. You've got too much character. You just get sidelined. Doesn't matter if you're the greatest actress in history. You can't get in here. You will not, quote, play the game. Now, the only thing that they become more blatant about is they send out black people to articulate the marching orders. Because you see, by Lee Daniels being the one who says, you all didn't play the game, his white masters get to hide their hand. They get to send him out, and he gets beat up, and he gets savaged. But the studio executives who sent him out to say that, they're not going to come out and go say anything. Malik Yoba had posted on Twitter or whatever, some interview somewhere, we was talking about it's a white woman. There's a gay white dude and there's a white woman who run Empire, not Lee Daniels. He's their front man. He is the one who goes out and says those things because they want him to spread the message. They want him to spread their message so they can hide their hand. And thus we go around and we rightfully jump on Lee Daniels because we should understand that white supremacy is never going to send a white face to sell you down the river. They are going to send black faces as their representatives, as their emissaries to sell you down the river. So that's what they do. That's the game that they play. And they play it very well. What we're here to do is so that we as a people understand who they are and we can take them down. But understand, sister, let's be very, very clear about that. You're not the intended audience. They know what they're doing. It's not coincidental. It's part of an organized, conscious strategy that the same game that's been going on is still going on to keep us distracted and bickering over other things. But as long as you got Terrence Howard, who, as long as you can get black people to debate, because what's the first thing that happened? He said that, and then you have black folks sitting up here trying to agree with him. They see that there's a wedge there. Send him out to say that, and black people are arguing with each other over whether we say nigger or nigga. But you notice what Terrence Howard is not saying? He says you can say nigger. He's saying you can say nigga. He says you can say anything except white supremacy. Now, he didn't say anything about that. He didn't invoke that conversation. He didn't bring that one up. But he has no problem engaging in a trivial discussion about the linguistics and the semantics of nigger. Now that he doesn't have a problem with. But turning the camera around, shining the light on his masters, he's not going to do that. Why? Because that's what he was sent out there to do. He works for Rupert Murdoch now. I don't know how much more plainly I can say that. Terrence Howard works for Rupert Murdoch the same way that Juan Williams and Jesse Lee Peterson work for Rupert Murdoch. He works for Rupert Murdoch now. Don't you know that he knows who he works for? And he's going to say, he is going to go out there and be the shill and be the human shield for whatever they want him to be. Don't you all know it's just that serious? He is willingly and consciously promoting the agenda of white supremacy. That is why you all have to understand that all your white supremacists ain't white. We have to be very clear on that. All your white, just because somebody isn't white doesn't mean they're not a white supremacist. And we better learn that
Well, that's
fast.
pretty clear after this week. Yeah, that's pretty clear after this week. I mean, we've seen it. I mean, a different person every day is popping up. And again, I think some of that's a distraction from some of the things that took place in Oklahoma. It's like, let's take the focus off these white, privileged white kids, and let's put it back on black people, as always. See, the black people don't have a problem with the word. So, you know what I mean? So let's take the, let's let these kids ease back into society with no problem. So you got parents cooning all week. You got the girl from the Cosby Show. I mean, so let's put it back on black people, and the problem will be solved.
You got Terrence Howard, you got Raven Simone, you got Common, Lee Daniels. We can go down the list. Everybody is staking out their claims, and what they're really demonstrating, you sister, is how cheap black people are to buy today. Dawn Staley, Common, Raven Simone, Terrence Howard. Every time you shake a tree, 3 coons fall out. And the reason why is because they understand that this is the last train, pardon the expression, leaving. They understand that if they don't stake, that white society is beginning to circle the wagons, and if they don't stake their claim now, it's over, because they don't actually trust. Look, sister, you have to understand, they don't actually trust or believe that black society is actually ever going to overcome our situation. And that is what Halle Berry did. That's what Bill Cosby did. That's what Mariah Carey did. All these clowns and idiots who say those kind of things, they are letting you know that they are hedging their bets with white supremacy. They're hedging their bets with them. And they're wagering that black society is not going to survive this. They are actually placing their bets against their own people in favor of the masters that they work for. And this is a time-honored tradition among sellouts, turncoats, and traitors. Time-honored tradition. Now, the real question is, going forward, what are we going to do to become adequate power brokers so that we can enact punishment mechanisms? Because we showed you that with Huffington Post, and we showed you that with Madame Noir. We can, if we all come together, we can form an effective punishment mechanism. We can. But that has to be our priority now. We've already demonstrated we can do it. We've already shown you that we can do it. Going forward, that's what we need to do. I'll let you have the last word.
Thanks for taking my call, Jason, and keep up the good work.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here today. Professor Truth, I think that what I've been saying is that the reason why you've had so many of them jumping out of the woodwork now is because they understand that after this, the gate is probably going to be closed. That white supremacy no longer needs as many clowns and coons because their numbers don't require that anymore. And so many people are fighting and jockeying for position because A, they're betting against black society, and B, they understand that there's only a limited amount of butter biscuits and trinkets and pats on the head to be handed out. So they're all placing their bets to get theirs now. What do you think, brother?
I think that the local chapter of the Jigaboon Bakery has indeed closed down, and the last batch of butter biscuits has come out of the oven, and ain't but a few left. So yeah, the jockeying for those last few Negro trinkets will be cannibalistic. As I listen to the genius that you were sitting here putting out for us, I want you to know that this woman, Dawn Staley, the comments that she makes, when she says that not letting the Confederate flag fly creates an opportunity for us not to have a tournament, and that it prevents her from doing her job. Now, how the world does not flying a flag stop her? You know, it reminds me of that little kerfluffle that Tariq Nasheed had with Wendy Wright, where she said that him and people like him were making things tough for her and the rest of her, people like her. I love that. I love black people who come along and they're much more sensitive to white supremacy and the dominant society's feelings than they are to black people's. Black people whose numbers are being culled and dwindling, but the good butter biscuit loving Negro always has time to worry about masses' feelings. Always. This is the problem that we're up against. Because when this woman speaks, we were supposed to descend on her like the wrath of God. But at the end of the day, it probably wouldn't have made too much of a difference for her personally, because she's not caring about anything other than how does she secure her position. Don't be surprised if you see her trying to find a way to get into a real basketball program.
Oh, I got a better idea than that, Professor Truth. Don't be surprised if you see her trying to get a job on ESPN. After all, Stephen A. Smith has paved the way. He's clearly shown you that if you buck dance and jive and buffoon and bow down and scrape and bootlick long enough, that you too can get a few $1 million shaved off. And you can get a little contract somewhere. So, brother, I think it goes deeper than that. I think she's got a plan. I think that she thinks that she can enroll in the Negro Bedouin's retirement plan. That if she butt dance long enough, she can get a job as a TV analyst and she will be set. She went from being a player to being a coach to being an analyst, and now she can just sit back and cruise. And to hell with black folk, brother. That's where I think she's going. I'm serious.
I believe you. I did a video about Lolo Jones, and one of the things that Terrell Starr, who works at a website that shall not be named, was saying that, well, it doesn't matter if she doesn't win an Olympic medal. She'll have a healthy post-career in the media. Now, he said that a couple of years back, and I think we can all agree that ain't going to happen. But doesn't change the fact that they want this. And the same thing goes for Patricia Williams. She's already campaigning for higher office. I mean, in her insipid little statement, I'm an elected official and love this state. Only word that was missing is my. She should have just said, I love my state. How the world are you going to sit here in South Carolina? Ain't that the place where James Byrd got murdered? I mean, how the world are you going to sit there and play this game when you are supposed to be smart enough to know that at the end of the day, you will have the honor of being the last Negro put on the cattle car train? You're supposed to be smart enough to know that, some of us, but nope. I guess that she figures that there's going to be some sort of higher office for her state legislature, maybe even Congress. All she has to do is show that she's willing to carry water.
And all she's got to do is sell out enough of us. Now, that's the thing right there, is that in other groups, you could never sit up and say, I want to say it was Tobias who posted up a quote from Steve. It was either Tobias or Jason Reed, one or the other. But posted up a quote from Steve Spurrier where he was like, to hell with the Confederate flag. This is a white man. To hell with the Confederate flag. If I had my way, it'd be taken down. So what a strange juxtapositioning there. Dawn Staley, black female, says keep the Confederate flag up. Steve Spurrier, white male, says take the Confederate flag down. Who needs white supremacists when you have Dawn Staley? Who needs the Klan when you have Dawn Staley? She is fighting harder for the Confederate flag than the Confederacy is. She's fighting harder to keep that flag where it is than even they are. And that's why it stays where it is. It's not staying there because of white society wanting it to stay there. So much as the fact they know they have enough Negroes who'll take it and accept it. And will publicly fight against our own best interests. We're going to go ahead and take another phone call here. Let me get caller from 646. You're on live with the Black Channel.
Good afternoon, Jason and Professor Black. How you guys doing today? My name is Jay from Brooklyn, New York.
Jay from Brooklyn, what's on your mind, brother?
It's funny that you guys talk about this. I constantly have arguments with my mom, who's from the civil rights generation, and my sister, who's a few years older than me, who's dating a white guy. Anytime I talk about black economics or the plight of black people, and we're on Skype, they tell me to quiet because her white boyfriend may get offended. And I'm like, it's funny that people are dying in the streets, being called, but yet you guys are worrying about somebody else's feelings being involved.
Well,
I'm sorry, I refuse to do it.
My first question there, brother, is where is the punishment mechanism in your family? Now, you say that's your sister. You say that's your sister talking like that?
Well,
where's your father? Now, the first line of defense to maintain a situation against that is your father. Where's your dad?
Well, sadly, it's enough to say we have different fathers, and I'm the youngest out of all four of us.
Okay, out of all four of us. So, needless to say, when you start off bad, you end up bad. So, first of all, that disciplinarian structure is not there. Like I said, now we got Negroes out here wildcatting and freestyling, and they are working against their own best interests and everything else. So, brother, and how old is she now?
She's in her 40s.
Write her off.
Yeah, I pretty much
it's a done deal.
Talked to one of my friends about that. I was like, I can't do anything with somebody that's already been broken.
Yeah. I mean, she's gone. She's lost to you. It's over. Here's the issue, everybody, and you all need to understand this. When you are confronted by a hostile force, you make two choices. You stand or you run. That's the way it happens. And that decision is going to decide the future for you, your offspring, your people, everything else. And that's anybody, anywhere. Anybody, anywhere. And what will happen is that if you decide when they hit you, when somebody hits you, you are going to decide to hit back. You're going to decide to break them or be broken. Those are the two choices you have. You're either going to break them or you're going to be broken. And your sister made the choice to be broken.
And Jason, I want to make one comment about how they always try to use rap as the N-word. And I had to remind her and other people. I was like, they never really liked rap music, even in its early beginnings. Well, they had no...
Brother, don't even get wrapped up in that. Don't even get involved in that. Because anybody... It's when we talk about white supremacy... White folk immediately try to change the subject.
Of course.
But when we talk about white people's grievances, they don't let you change the subject. Sean Hannity doesn't let you change the subject to white supremacy. When they want to talk about, we want to get rid of affirmative action and whatnot, they don't let you change the subject to white supremacy. Rap music is a non-issue. It's a non-sequitur. It has nothing to do with it, and they know it. They just want you to allow them to change the subject. So from now on, brother, don't try to debate that or rationalize it or anything. See it for what it is. It's a red herring meant to distract you and stop you from talking about the subject at hand. The subject at hand is white supremacy, nothing else. These people are not saying nigga because they're rap fans. They're saying it because they're white supremacists. Those white boys sat there on that bus and said, there'll never be a nigger in SAE. You can hang them from a tree. What part of rap is that? It isn't one. So once you say that to them, that has nothing to do with it. Don't let people sit up here and get you wrapped up in deflections. And we as black folk, we need to understand that's the worst thing that we keep doing is indulging a deflection because they know that they've taken you into a detour. They're trying to get you to change the subject, and they're hoping that you'll be silly enough to sit there and talk to them about this non-issue. Don't engage it.
And the funny thing about that is when they asked me about Empire, do I watch it? I was like, I don't watch that coon or that nigga ass show. And they looked at me like I was, like I insulted like Christ himself or something.
Well, I mean, they understand. They understand what coonery is, brother. They understand it, and what they're doing, they did their Terrence Howard litmus test with you.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to see how into it you are. Are you going to be a person that they can turn, like The Walking Dead, like vampires? They want to know if you're somebody they can turn. So they throw out these little feelers. They send out these little litmus tests. And they want to see if you can be turned. And they're constantly doing it, brother. That's something that's never going to stop. You're always going to have people trying to test the waters to see, can you be converted?
The sad thing, I remember you saying this because I listened to your podcast faithfully, you, Tariq, and as well as Zoe and Corey Holcomb. And it's funny, they always like to blame the black man for the plight of what's going on in his community. But nobody looks at the black woman for what she has created with all these effeminized little boys. And I actually coach a middle school. And I had to check them like, hey, man, that rolling your eyes, sucking your teeth, only females do that. So you need to stop. You need to cut that out right now.
Right.
I mean, you have boys playing basketball worrying about how their shoes look while they're playing, which is baffling.
And what we have to understand, brother, is that is a part of the white supremacist structure as well. Because they understand that they built this bastard baby culture as a buffer to keep intelligent black people stymied and stonewalled and held off from resources and whatnot. So they understand what they've been doing. So I definitely understand your point there, but let us not take our eye off the ball that there is a reason that white supremacy does a lot of things, but it has never tried to shut down or stop the welfare state because they understand that is a part of their apparatus. And the way that the police and people on your job and everything else understand, brother, it wouldn't be there if they weren't funding it. It wouldn't be there. And I'm not saying to let people off the hook because you all know where I stand on that kind of thing. But what I'm saying is that don't forget who the culprit is behind this. Terrence Howard is on TV, but Terrence Howard doesn't own any TV stations. Mimi Faust can swing from all the shower poles she wants to, but Mimi Faust does not own a porn company. Nicki Minaj does not own a record company or a cable channel. So understand, these people may be willing coons, but the power is what's behind them. The power is what's behind them. And you will always have that going on as long as your side does not have a power. Here's something that we as black men in particular need to get through our heads, brother. It is not, I didn't sit up here and complain about Madame Noir. I went to war. And we took them down. I didn't complain about what they're doing wrong with their media. I instead got started on what we're doing right with ours. And what we need to do with ours. And we, as black men in particular, we have to stop complaining about, the bad guys being the bad guys and their flunkies being their flunkies. I hold these types of broadcasts so that we can remind you all that they're out there. But at the end of it, what I always remind you is that where's our power structure? We are not going to be able to stop any of these things as long as we can't punish them. As long as folk like your kinfolk and your flunky friends and the rest of the coon bunch, as long as they are able to keep doing that without punishment, they're going to keep doing that. I'll let you have the last word.
Keep on doing what you're doing and keep on the good fight. I know I will.
All right, Brother Black first. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Professor Truth, what do you do when you have a coon in the family? You call Dr. Phil? Ileana Van Zant? What do you do when the coon next door is actually the coon on the couch? What do you do then?
You pack their bags and you point them to the nearest train station. Let them know the coon train shows up at 5. That's what you do. We need the line to be drawn big and black. We need to have a zero tolerance policy, and the policy must be enforced. Black empowerment begins with you. It can't begin anywhere else. Black empowerment is not something that Jason Black does. It's not something Tariq Nasheed does. It's not something that Professor Truth does or Claude Anderson does. Black empowerment is a group sport. If we have people who sit here and decide that it's okay for Bushika and Taquana Lika to have the bastard babies, and well, at the end of the day, long as you got a mother, that's all that matters, then what you're going to get is more of it. If we make it clear that this ain't the business, that there are tangible punishments for violating the code, then what happens is this stuff starts to go away. But this is going to begin with black people saying, yeah, if I got a coon in the family, I can't deal with you. Because sooner or later, coons always wind up beggars. They're like freaking bad pennies. They're always turning up. They're going to sit there and petition for their butter biscuit. And when it falls through, ooh, I sure could use some support. Yeah, you sure could. Go back to the white folk and see if you can get it. This is going to be the lesson that we take away from Terrence Howard. You thought that he was your boy because he did Red Tails. So freaking what? He's showing his true colors. Have check, will travel. Now, before I go any farther, earlier I had said George Bird. I made a mistake. Who I was trying to talk about was actually George Stinney. George Stinney was a 14-year-old black child who was executed in the state of South Carolina. He was put to death in the electric chair, and it was just last December that that they had that verdict or sentence, what have you, that they had it reversed, but it doesn't matter. He's been dead for 70 years. They executed a child. A child. And this is the place that old Patricia Williams loves. I've lived in every state and find issues and all. Kind of sounds like Sheena Howard, Dr. Howard, talking about black people have lots of problems. Don't you love it when these people sit here with this mealy-mouthed equivocationist speech? Do you consider yourself black first? I consider myself a lot of things first. What's the single biggest issue facing us? We have a lot of issues, not just one. South Carolina's racist as hell. Well, I've lived in every state and I find issues in all. There is no amount of degradation. There is no amount of oppression. There is no act so heinous that they are ever going to take the hard line. So when you sit here and see a Patricia Williams, you are seeing that Patricia Williams is the enemy. You are seeing somebody who looks at you and is trying to use you for votes, a rung on the ladder to higher office. That's what you learn. So while George Stinney, a child killed by the state of South Carolina, lies in his grave, Patricia Williams is sitting here saying, I love this state. And that means she loves the fact that George Stinney Jr. was murdered by the very state that she loves. Now, I got a question for you, IBS. If that was you who got accused of killing two white folk, and that was your child that they put to death in 2015, do you think Patricia Williams would have reacted any differently? When you say that racism put my child to death, do you think she'd say, yep, racism sure did? Or do you think she would say, well, you know, this could have happened in any state? There's injustice everywhere. Yeah, but injustice seems to keep hitting us 90% of the time. How can that be justice? Now, the last caller that we had, I don't want to pick a particularly small nit, but before we go any further, I had a couple of messages that were in my inbox on YouTube. Some of the brothers apparently, got their noses bent out of joint because Jason did a couple of broadcasts where he was calling the brothers to task for not having their own resource base and pointing out that you can't expect a woman to follow you if you've given her nothing to follow. Some of the brothers, looking for an easy victory, I think, basically were complaining at me, and they were saying, well, Jason was sitting here putting everything on us, and these black women out here, 50% of them got an STD, and 80% of them are overweight, and 100% of them got an attitude problem. And they didn't seem to understand my response when I told them, what has that got to do with you having your own resource base? That's not something that you do for her anyway. That's something you do for yourself. They wanted to change the subject. And this wasn't just one or two guys. This was closer to 3 to 5. In the space of something like a week and a half, this happened. Black men who I had never heard from before and really had nothing to say before this. What that told me was Jason hit him straight in the eye. And I'm glad that he did. Brothers, there's something I want to point out. There is no way in hell that you're going to get around the fact that you have got to have power, wealth, and influence. You got to control things if you want to survive. There's no getting around that. And you're not going to find some movement that's going to let you get around it. Like, say, I'm just going to pull something out of the air, the men's rights movement. Yes, we can rail against black women for having fallen for the canard of feminism, but you know what, brothers? A lot of you have repeated their mistake. In 2015, you're repeating their mistake. Because the men's rights movement is dominated by a bunch of good old boys. Who do you think Paul Elam is? Good old boy from Texas, who has nothing good to say about black people. Every time he mentions black people, it's always as a cautionary tale. And he's not alone. His fellow travelers are the same way. You would think that a bunch of white guys who talk about how the system's raking men over the coals, you'd think they'd sit and say, man, maybe these black folk really did have a problem that was coming from the system that we as white people control. You'd think they'd say that, but they don't. They just simply say, well, we don't want to wind up like the black folks. They give some lip service to the government. Might have had something to do with it. Man, that's just the same old white propaganda line about the government ain't your friend, the Negro ain't your friend. That's the men's rights movement, a clumsy front for the modern white male power movement. But there's also a movement that's not much more redeeming. This MGTOW thing. I actually had someone who apparently wanted to recruit me for that. I didn't even bother to respond. I could go into a long diatribe about the philosophical failings of the so-called MGTOW thing for black men and how there's no such thing as a black man who should even want to be part of that, but I'll just simply refute it by saying this. We are intelligent black society. The operative term there being society. A society is a group of men and women all moving in the same direction. Not a bunch of men each going his own way. So for those of you who had something to say about Jason pointing out that black men should have resources before they're calling themselves taking on a woman as a life partner, in fact, before you even start trying to pursue a relationship, you need to have some sort of resource base. And claiming, well, shouldn't she be respecting something other than and more than the resources? You're flying in the face of basic human behavior, basic human nature. The women have a problem when Jason points out that when you show up with a bunch of kids that the man you're pursuing or wanting to be with didn't give you, that's a problem. You're showing up with a bunch of STDs, that's a problem. Don't ask him to overlook that because you're asking a man to overlook his basic nature. And his nature is, I want a woman who ain't bringing her baggage with me. Well, can't he look past the baggage? Yeah, he could look past the baggage, but he ain't. Well, shouldn't a woman want a man? Shouldn't it matter if he got some resources or not? Yeah, it shouldn't matter, but the problem is it does, because that's the reality. You're asking a woman to get with you when she doesn't know whether or not she's going to survive with you. You're asking her to roll the dice. Ain't no way in hell that makes sense. So, brothers, yeah, you had a problem with what Jason said because he was talking about you. And that's why this MGTOW thing appeals to some of y'all. Because MGTOW apparently seems to be some sort of philosophy that says that instead of you saying, you know what, I'm being lazy, I'm being pointless, I want to sit on the couch and do nothing, instead you can try to make it sound like it's a virtue. I'm not supporting a society that doesn't support me. Are you still using electricity from the society? Yeah. Working a job in the society? Yeah. And you're still sitting here bitching about women even though you claim that you're over them now? Yeah. My friend, you are a liar. What you're really doing is you're looking for someone who will give you a good sounding excuse for doing what it is you've been doing all along, which is nothing. And I don't want to make common cause with brothers who are making excuses for what they're not doing. When Jason had a problem with the issue that we were not having black economic empowerment as a front burner issue, he didn't sit there and say, man, we need to be complaining about Don Lemon. Maybe if we start a Twitter campaign, let's go on change.org and start a petition. He didn't sit there and say, let me change the white media. He said, let's establish our own. He didn't say, let's fight for a chance to get some airtime on Fox News. He said, let's make a documentary that will own all the time and it'll say exactly what we want. Jason didn't sit there and say, let's find new and inventive ways to annoy the people to annoy the people over at MSNBC. Well, we need a show on MSNBC. Why? So Comcast can dictate what you can and cannot say? No, you have to have your own total control. H. Rap Brown told you about that 50 years ago and people didn't listen. So brothers, no. If you're asking me whether or not RIP Black America was me putting in an application to be part of the men's rights movement, you've gotten your answer. My problems as a human being are not stemming from my gender. They are stemming from the fact that I'm black. And that white supremacist, he didn't have a problem with me because I'm male. He has a problem with me because of the color of my skin. It's kind of like whenever we have these feminists and these gay activists who bomb into our proceedings and sit there and complain about, well, what you're doing is no different than the white supremacists. No, the white supremacist had a problem with me before I was born. He will have a problem with my children. He has a problem with my relatives. Don't sit there trying to conflate things. So brothers, starting tonight, you are going to reaffirm, you are going to rededicate yourselves to the cause of black economic empowerment. And as the leaders of our people, that means you have to reaffirm yourself to acquiring things that you own, control, and can pass down. Yeah, you can sit there and say that women shouldn't be looking for resources from a man, but the sad truth happens to be if you want a woman to bear your child, there is a reality there. And the reality happens to be she has a right to look and say, is this somebody who can support me? Because that's where a woman's fundamental respect comes from. Her respect for a man comes from whether or not he's in a position to call hands. Is he in a position to pull her card? You know, there is something that Michael Crichton, the now deceased novelist, said once, which was that it is inevitably the task of the weaker partner to adjust to the demands of a relationship. If you want it for free, then you're a fool. Bushika might give it to you for free, but that's because Uncle Sam's paying the freight for her. What you're supposed to be wanting is a relationship where each party understands the responsibilities, the rules, and regulations that go along with it. And for a man, that starts with the fact that he is supposed to be the leader, and he is the leader by virtue of what he has built. Jive-talking hucksters have been running the yard, and they've been running the yard because 50 years ago we made the decision it didn't matter what you had. The black church got taken over by slick talkers and the women following them. Black men have been going along with these street corner con men and going along with them. The neighborhoods deteriorate, the Asians and the Hispanics and the whites are pushing you out, and you got nowhere to go. In the old days, you went from the black neighborhoods to the slums. At this point here, they don't have anything for you. So yes, it matters. And a black man who forms his lips to criticize Jason because he points out these common sense truths, this is a black man who is defying reality, and we've done that for too long. I say that because I want to get that off my chest.
Well, brother, like I say, in the 21st century, a lot of men are out here acting like hoes, if I can just say it like that. And because there is no enforcement mechanism now we of course do have an enforcement mechanism at the Black Channel, of course, and that's one of the things they're not accustomed to, is that they're not accustomed to the idea that they can be checked. I don't publicly do that kind of thing, but they can be checked and upgraded. We do have an enforcement mechanism for when people get off code, because we are not people who rely on theorists and theoreticians. We don't give any type of credibility to that. And because we don't, there are people who are going to have a rapid learning curve But it's good that we had that learning curve, because we're going to have an announcement coming up here just shortly here in a few minutes before the broadcast is over. I want to see if I can take another phone call here. Let me get caller from 917. You're on live with the Black Channel. This Negro is actually sleeping. Professor Truth, is this clown ready for the revolution?
I think he's ready for some Lunesta. Take a good listen, folks. This is what's calling into intelligent black society. When you look at that list of listeners, this guy's one of them. I think he got lost on the way to World Star Hip Hop. Clearly, black empowerment doesn't interest this clown.
And then you wonder why Terrence Howard thinks that he can say the things he says. Then you wonder why. Caller from 336, you're in the listener queue. Please learn how to use your keypad. You're on live with the Black Channel.
Sorry about that, Mr. Jason Black. Hello, how are you doing, sir? Hello, Professor Black Truth. Welcome back, sir.
What's your name? Where you calling from?
James Matthew. I'm calling from North Carolina.
And what's on your mind?
I'm just wondering, have black men just been beaten so much in submission that we just want to stay in that place? Because it's like black men, we just complain a lot, and I get kind of irritated because it's like a lot of black men complain about how we don't have any jobs and child support and a hope in the prison industrial complex, but it's like we're kind of not mobilizing to do anything about it or try to galvanize our people to do anything about it. For instance, with the child support, so many black men are I can't see my kids, but it's why don't you try to put your money, resources together to have a politician on your bed so they can try to make the laws favor towards you, and plus with the prison industrial complex too. Why don't we try to try to get as many black men on board? But it's just nothing's going on. It's the social justice crowd is just begging for equality and marching, but it's they're doing the same thing the civil rights generations is doing. So it's just giving us no tangible results or anything.
Professor Truth?
Simply put, as black people, we've become professional bull jive artists, the majority of us, and we just need to be honest about that. Can't fix the problem until we admit to the problem. And the problem happens to be that black men aren't leading and are aggressively, hyper-aggressively, looking for excuses not to lead. They're not building and looking for excuses not to build. They want someone to tell them that it's okay. Now, there is power that the dominant society has. But there's also power that we've got if we're willing to use it. Unfortunately, a lot of that power requires that you stop cooning. It also requires that you're going to have to burn the midnight oil and do some things that you're not used to doing. If you want to play, if you want to take the easy way out, well, there is the coon train. If you decide that you're going to live on the government dole, or that you're going to be looking for white people to give you something, then there's the underclass. But if you've made up your mind that our people shall not fade from this earth, then there's only one way to go. Black economic empowerment. Because you see, complaining about what Fox Studios ain't giving you, like Danny Glover did with his Toussaint L'Ouverture thing, complaining about white society not giving you your fair shot, that's easy. Building an economy is hard. Complaining about black women being gold diggers, that's easy. Building your own economic foundation so that she knows not to even look in your direction unless she's coming correct. I mean, you want to discipline a woman, have your own. But that's hard to do. That's hard to do. And since failure tends to seek out failure, misery loves company, we have no lack of black people who love to form these teams of commiserating cowards complaining about what the world ain't going on. Well, IBS is not about complaining. We are going to die in a state of blissful complaint. And even if you're right, that means nothing. What means something is when you see the problem that's in front of you, you plan upon a solution, and then you implement that plan. When Jason and I started this little experiment, the stated goal was to take control of the discourse within our community and then to elevate the debate. When we started it, everybody was using the language of the Hotep crowd who perverted Dr. Ben's teachings and perverted the mission that he was on, and they turned the conscious community, what little virtue it might have had, they turned it into a professional do-nothing society. And the result of that has been predictable. Black people got on board with it because it appealed to the part of them that thinks that religion's going to help you. So Hotepism became the new religion. Psychological masturbation about history became the new religion, and nothing was done. That's what it was when we first came on the scene. People still sitting here talking about their chakras and still sitting here talking about vibrations and talking about all this other nonsense. And then the blackchannel.net came along. IBS came along and gave people a vocabulary of true empowerment. And now you're hearing a lot of people using the language that we are using. One of the people who PM'd me actually had the nerve to invite me. Well, he wasn't inviting me. Basically, what he was saying was, hey, Professor Truth, why don't you get on the first thing smoking to New York City so you can come have an argument with some of these conscious people? And then this fool probably wonders why I blocked him. There have been people who have tried to get Jason to go to one of those debates. Man, you need to debate these guys, man. You can get them there. Tell them you need to debate them. How come Jason won't debate them? Because we don't need to. Debates are for people who are trying desperately to be heard and hoping that they can win an argument. We do not argue about the need and the validity of power, wealth, and influence. We do not argue that. We don't debate that. So you're not going to see us anytime real soon or at all arguing with some clown about whether or not money matters. We don't argue that. Because the only thing legitimate to say is this microphone I'm speaking into was created by a company. I had to buy it. And the electricity being used to transmit my voice has to be bought. And the clothes I'm wearing had to be bought. And the building that we're in had to be bought. Vibrations didn't bring it about. Hotepin didn't bring it about. And this is what dominated the scene before we came along. The change is starting to set in. And now what you see is we are picking targets. We are no longer sitting. Now that we have aggregated enough of that base and shown that we have, as Jason beautifully put it, enough people with the resources to inflict their will, now we're in a position where we can start picking some fights. Now, we ain't going to be brawling all day long, but we can find a situation like with Boyce Watkins when somebody decides it's time to throw Boyce Watkins under the coon train. We can say, not so fast. You're going to get checked and hard. When you have somebody who sits there and decides that they're going to say that it's okay to fly the South Carolina flag, and in fact, as long as you give me an NCAA tournament game in my hometown, you can do whatever you want to me. Nah, that ain't the business. And when somebody decides that they're going to slander Malcolm X and try to say he's bisexual, we can check them and force them to take that thing down. This is what it's about. This is why we do this. Exactly. A people who are on their knees will get nothing. Jason's been posting a lot of stories about the film industry in China, and also saying that the seeds that Bruce Lee planted are flowering now. And one of the people I think you should take exceptional note of is Donnie Yen. Now, Donnie Yen, you probably remember him from that movie Ip Man. He was also in a couple of American movies. He was in Blade 2. But Donnie Yen said something very interesting about a year and a half ago. When asked why it was that and he's from Boston, by the way. He's actually from the U.S. But they asked him, why is it that you're not trying harder to crack the American market? In fact, you're not trying at all. And he said, because I don't need Hollywood. They actually put that, it was in Variety, and I think it was on Deadline as well. He said, I don't need Hollywood. Ironically, to those not in the know, Hollywood immediately started offering him parts. They're like, we're doing a remake of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Can you be in it? You want to know why? Because they saw that this was a guy who wasn't looking for a bribe. And black men can learn something from that.
You know, just to interject for just a moment, for those of you not aware, and I mentioned this here a couple of weeks ago, in the month of January, I believe it was, the Chinese box office surpassed the U.S. box office if you don't count Canada. The Chinese box office, for the first time in history, there was a box office that made more than America if you don't count Canada, and it won't be very long before they pass it just all together. That was in January. The changes will not happen slowly, they will happen quickly now. And when he says he doesn't need America, now you're going to have a whole new generation of young Chinese men who are going to be like, why do I have to go to Hollywood? All the action's happening over here in China. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Meanwhile, black folk are fighting to see who can be the biggest coon on Empire.
Yeah, look at Hollywood. They are bowing the knee to the Chinese. That movie Looper with Bruce Willis and Gordon Levitt, there was a scene in there, and I believe that this was a movie where there was a scene where they were in China where the technology was allegedly made because they needed Chinese backing to make the movie. And they wanted to have Gordon Levitt like kissing a Chinese woman, or he gets the Chinese woman in the end, and they shut that down real quick. Chinese sat there and said, that ain't going to make it in the movie if we have anything to do with it. And when asked why, they said, if we show this white man sitting here taking the Chinese woman while the Chinese man is sits there looking all impotent, 500 million Chinese men will riot. You see, what the Chinese understand, and what Donnie Yen understood, is that there is simply no substitute for standing on your own 2 feet like a man.
But do you know why that is, though? That's because white folk have dealt with black folk for so long. You see, they're so used to black folk being subservient and bowing down, and we will just sell out our mama and kick our granddaddy in the teeth for a Cheerios commercial, that we've taught them that they can just punk everybody. So they just walk into situations now, testing people to see if they can punk them. Something that they would never allow to happen in one of their movies. They would never let the white guy get shown up by a Chinese. But yet they have no problem running up in the Chinese face and saying, yeah, and in the end we get the girl and you guys look kind of goofy. And they want to check and see if they can punk you like that. And the Chinese like, no, we don't do punking. Well, if somebody's going to get punked, it's going to be you, not us. But they're so used to dealing with black folk that we have conditioned them to think that just everybody puts up with that.
Absolutely. Take a look at, as an example, those god-awful Transformers movies. Now, the third Transformers movie, Dark of the Moon, they had an Asian guy in there. I forget his name. It's not important. But Michael Bay just punked him out. First time we see the guy, he is angry at his white coworker. He's the prototypical Asian stereotype: overweight, glasses, awkward, can't get a girl to save his life. And he runs into the bathroom. There's that gay undertone. They're always trying to show the Asians as effeminate. And he's sitting here all up on the white guy in his face. You're making me look bad, and I'm mad at you, and I'm going to get the goods on you. That's how they portrayed Asians in the third Transformers movie. Fast forward 2 years, Paramount went to China because they were trying to. That's part of the reason why they make movies partially in China, so that they can get those Chinese box office dollars. Because the Chinese now have gotten to the point where If that movie does not,
90 seconds.
if that movie does not at least partially film in China, you can't even get it shown there. The Chinese are not, they're not backing down, they're doubling down. And Chinese audiences won't see it unless they know that there's been some sort of local investment. Kind of sounds like the Asians that we deal with here, doesn't it? But the point that I'm trying to make is in the fourth Transformers movie, they filmed it partially in China, and the portrayal of the Asians was very different in the next movie.
And in that fourth movie, the way they show the Chinese government in particular. Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, there's an Asian woman in there, but Mark Wahlberg, who is single in the movie, he ain't putting no moves on her, and neither is Stanley Tucci, and neither is Kelsey Grammer or any of the other white guys. She's there, but they understand she's a Chinese official, she's a Chinese businesswoman, and ain't nobody trying to put the moves on her. That's different now, ain't it? Usually the Chinese woman's fawning all over the white guys. Instead, she's sitting here giving them lip every 5 seconds. And at the end of the movie, the Chinese Air Force comes in to bomb the Decepticons. And no, the Decepticons do not shoot them down either. Now, that's a sea change in only 2 years. That's why I'm bringing that up. You look at Looper, you look at the contrast between Transformers 3 and 4, and what you're seeing is the Chinese are making it clear. You ain't going to just show us any old kind of way. Go ahead, caller.
Professor Truth, my mom says I have a bad luck mouth, but I hate to say it, but I want to prophesize it, but I think that black people who get our act together is like when white supremacy puts his boot that it had on us in Jim Crow. That's what we had to say is enough is enough. Cause I think it has to go back to somewhat like, kind of like Jim Crow era, for black people just to say enough is enough. We're just tired of this. Let's just do
I don't believe that, brother. And the reason why I don't believe that because that's never actually happened. Brother, we went through, 400 years of slavery. And what did we actually do as a group about it? You had an uprising here and a rebellion there that quickly got shut down. But as a national group, brother, there was nothing that black people did to get ourselves out of slavery. You had a Frederick Douglass over here and, another person over there. But that's it. You didn't have black people as a group do anything about that. The Black Wall Streets got bombed. What was the black response? Marcus Garvey got deported. What was the black response? We can go down the list, brother. I mean, there at no time have black people as a group actually done something different. The only times that there were any actual changes were when you had black people who had the ability to call hands like that. The Black Panthers. Malcolm X could run your ass out of Harlem. I mean, when you had black people who were power brokers like that. So, brother, white supremacy, and I mean this, white supremacy tomorrow morning could start lynching black folk from every street lamp in America, and black people as a group would not do anything unless an organized group of power brokers got together. While seeing what happened in Ferguson with the Ferguson uprising, it makes sense, but the Ferguson uprising was irrelevant and pointless if it's not going to be followed up by concrete action. And we have tried to get in touch with people to see if they want to take concrete action, and there's been a woeful few of them who've been willing to do that. So my response to you, brother, is nothing's going to change. It doesn't matter if they start wholesale slaughtering. Hell, they're already doing it. It's not like they're kind of not doing it. They're already doing it. They've already made it clear that in the 21st century, they can kill a black person anytime, any place, anywhere, under any circumstances any person can, and there is nothing that will happen to them. And black folk haven't made any moves about that. We haven't done anything about that. Tamir Rice showed you that. Eric Garner showed you that we can execute you in public. We haven't made any moves about that. They can get out there and go dance a jig in Ferguson at the police station. But where you're supposed to be raising hell is at the polling place. You can go do that now. They'll get out in the streets for that. But how many of them are going to show up so that they can elect their own officials? And then we can just make it the law that if a police officer stops you without cause, you can defend yourself by any means necessary. Now, when is that going to occur? And where is the black constituency demanding it?
But it's like the activists didn't do anything up in Ferguson. It was like, I think it's just they were just there for photo ops, to be honest. Because it's like every time people talked about economic empowerment, they just kept it like the Hotep brothers, just deflecting. They didn't want to do anything about building up the black economy of Ferguson or anything. It's just like nothing had with getting on stage with Al Sharpton and snatching a mic. I mean, really.
Well, that is what passes for meaningful action there. And we have tried to change the conversation, but that is what passes for meaningful action. That's what passes for it there. And what makes us different is that we realize that's not going to do anything. The time for marching and protesting is over, and white supremacy has sent their agents in as activists, so-called activists, and put a camera in their faces. They look for the people who don't have a plan and are not attempting to threaten the system. The people who their activism platform, Andrea Yates' platform, Ashley Yates' platform for change in Ferguson is to do nothing. The change she wants to see is absolutely nothing, and that's why CNN is not afraid to put a camera in front of her face. We'll make her the voice of the protesters. Why? Because she is an advocate for the status quo. She's an advocate for it.
The thing that pissed me off with the black feminists was that they always talk about how black women get killed and people ignore it. People try to change the conversation. But isn't that what they did the whole time with Mike Brown? They talked about transsexuals. They talked about lesbian. They talked about, we have to embrace the perfection of black women, like you said. All this other non sequiturs instead of talking about how the police is just killing unarmed black men at an alarming rate. And it's like for every one black man gets killed, for every one black woman gets killed, there's like 100 brothers that get killed. So it's like, why turn the topic to gender war when we're facing our enemies? Why do that?
Because for the same reason that Bossip and Madame Noir posted these slanderous, libelous pieces about Malcolm X and so-called being gay, because they think that they will use this as a platform to change the national conversation. That we will no longer be talking about being black, and that instead we can change the issue to gay. We can change the issue to something that does not matter. So, if you can transform Malcolm X through some alchemy into being gay, then what have you really done? What you've really done is tell us that the issue is gay rights or gay activism, and that that's what we should be focusing on. Now, you notice Ashley Yates will tell you she wants laws for gays. She won't tell you she wants any laws for black people. But it's our job, brother. It's our job to call that out. It's our job to do that. We are supposed to be the ones who are doing that. We are supposed to be the ones who put her on Front Street. You're never going to get her masters to do that. I didn't complain about Nicole Dunca and the Oregonian. I took to the air, I took to the internet, I took it to the people and said, this is what you need to know. This is the intellectual firepower necessary so you can confront them and understand what's going on. I didn't complain about the Huffington Post. I said, take the fight to them. I didn't complain about Madame Noir. I took the fight to them. And I have no intention on complaining about Ashley Yates and the rest of her agent provocateurs. I'm going to take the fight to them because that's how you stop them. But it's going to take more than just me, though. It needs to be us as a concerted, organized effort. That's what's going to change it. Because she's working with the bad guys. She has no incentive whatsoever to change.
And I'm so glad that Clyde Anderson debunked a lot of stuff during his, I seen a video of him in Florida. He was talking about how a lot of black women just get confused and just keep on diving off into, feminism. He was like, well, the white woman makes basically the same thing as the white man because they're both in the same household and they share everything. So she's basically the co-owner of everything. So why would you just listen to her? And I remember you said that it's because of narcissism. I remember in the TMI group today, you said it's because of narcissism, and I forgot the other reason why.
An insatiable selfishness.
A lot of black men that are cowardly.
But, we have that going on. But here's the real thing, brother. At the end of everything, the Black Channel does what nobody else does. We need concrete action behind that. Ashley Yates is a tool She is a tool, and she is an agent working in favor of people who are trying to destabilize us. So is Madame Noir and the rest of them. And it's time for us to go beyond just identifying the enemies on the inside and actually doing something to counter them. So once we finished identifying them, the next course becomes, what do we do next? If you really want change in Ferguson, are you waiting on TBA? How many of you, with the exception of Timothy Goldman was the one, I mean, this brother spent his own time and his own money to go and get the documents in Ferguson. And they didn't make it easy on us, by the way. They did not make it easy for us to get the campaign documents on Jay Knowles. They didn't make that easy at all. But we went and got that. And then you find out you find out how shameful the situation really is in Ferguson. That this man ran unopposed, got reelected, only had $2,500. But that shouldn't be too surprising because Bob McCullough, the prosecuting attorney, who had already predetermined he was going to let Darren Wilson walk, he got reelected unopposed during the grand jury. So black folk in Ferguson and St. Louis were complaining, but during that whole process, the prosecutor who was going to let him go got reelected unopposed. Running unopposed.
And they're still marching. It's still marching.
Yes. So they're all out there in front of the police complex. They're all out there in front of City Hall. The only places they're not are at the bank and at the voting polls. And what that tells you, brother, if you cannot all rally around, if you all cannot construct your own political apparatus, that means you do not have an agenda. You don't have an agenda. And that's a problem. If you can't construct your own political apparatus, you don't. Somebody tell me, what is the agenda in Ferguson? What's the agenda?
Either whining, complaining, marching, and moaning.
In other words,
I think that's
exactly what we've seen everywhere else. That's the agenda. In a town that's 67% black and white supremacy is riding you around like Shetland ponies.
Do we have to come at these politicians for like millions of dollars to work in our favor? Because, Clark Anderson talked about the 5-story building, like your economy, then you control like the courtroom, I think, then politics and stuff. I forgot the other two.
Brother, we don't need millions of dollars. Hell, you could do it in Ferguson. The white folk are doing it just fine in Ferguson. You could take over that city council, as I explained in my video. You could take over that city council for $10,000. The down payment on a cheap house.
But our people are so anti-money and economics, and it's just like we just move. I hate that. That's one thing I despise the social justice crowd. I really despise them. They're like the new civil rights generation. They're just the younger civil rights generation with the social justice crowd. They just have nothing for us, and it's not going to give us tangible action. I'm just tired of it.
Well, I mean, but that's what separates the slaves from intelligent black society. In the 21st century, anybody who has a problem starts bringing up objections to taking control of our economy and our economic destiny, because that's the only thing that's going to happen. That's the only thing that's actually going to work. That is the only adult response to any of this. Anybody who tries to resort to the cowardice of, oh, well, we can't do money because other people need to lord over us with money. We can't do it ourselves. Anybody who does that, just understand, those are the slaves. And it is those who attempt to fight economic destiny who are marking themselves as the slaves. They're identifying themselves. I am one of the slaves. And that's why I'm not doing that. I am a slave. So in the 21st century, that's how we have to remember them. They are identifying themselves now. And we should be glad once they identify themselves. That should be clear. Once they've identified themselves, we should really be done with it at that point. We don't have to go on. I mean, we can, but we don't have to.
Jason, how do we end like the welfare state? I'm just curious because the government is not going to stop it. It just keeps on continuing to break into the black family.
You need a black power structure. Same thing I've been saying, brother. It comes back to a black power structure. We're not going to get around it. you are going to have black men and black women who have the power, wealth, and influence to call the shots. You've got Section 8 housing. What you do is in your city or your town, people can have Section 8 vouchers, but that's not going to help them if there is nobody who will accept a Section 8 voucher. People can have food stamps. That's not going to help if there's not a store that accepts them. We can go down the list if you want to. But you and I understand something, brother. Paupers cannot control a society. You can't have a bunch of broke people or a bunch of financially deficient people talking about we want to call shots. And when you say that you want to do away with the welfare state, what you are doing is saying I want to call shots against the white supremacist power structure that makes billions of dollars off the welfare state. That's what you're saying. You want to call shots. And it's fine. You can do that. But you have to have something to call it with.
Do you know how many people like literally flat out kick my ass if I said that? Just like I just want to end the welfare state. Do you know how many black folks would literally choke me out? Just saying something like that. I just want to get rid of the welfare state. It's just we're too dependent on it, and it's not doing our people any good. It's just making us in a more impoverished state. Because that's what it does. It just keeps you in an impoverished state. It makes you lazy and comfortable. That's what it does. It's not going to make you do anything. It just drives your senses of trying to progress in life. So not doing anything.
Well, brother, I mean, first of all, you shouldn't be around people who are living like that no way, because they'll just keep you under a barrel just like they are. But the other thing, brother, is that all we'll be able to do is complain about these things if we don't become power brokers in our own right. It's not enough. I don't mind the Black Channel being a rallying point. That's why I put it together for it, to be a lighthouse. That's fine. But it can't just be, okay, Jason Black is over here, and if he doesn't say anything or if he doesn't do anything, it won't get done. That has got to stop. That's got to stop. Do you know the reason why I don't really deal with a bunch of people? Do you know why? It's because I don't see a bunch of people actually putting something concrete together. I don't see that. I see a bunch of people who call me, and I see a bunch of people who write me, and I see a bunch of people who email me, and I see a bunch of people leaving comments on Facebook. But as far as, okay, Jason Black's got his apparatus over here, and I got mine over there, that's not happening. That's not happening. That is not what's occurring. They are not doing that as a group. So I've got people who can, cheerlead, but as far as who I can hook up with and we can share resources and stuff, it doesn't work like that. Boyce Watkins has his media apparatus. Tariq's got his. I got mine. And did you notice that we all were able to get together on that? Did you notice that? But Dr. Watkins could not hook up with us if we didn't have anything. And we couldn't hook up with Tariq if he didn't have anything. And all of us who are sitting out here saying, well, I'm just going to sit here and cheerlead and stuff, man. We need a lot more people to get off the sidelines and say, hey, I'm going to do my part. And maybe you don't have to do what we're doing here with this. But like in Ferguson and stuff, man, we ought to have many more boots on the ground than just Tim Goldman. We ought to have many more boots on the ground. We should have had that whole damn city council taken over. We should have just had that flat taken over. It should have been taken over. And what do we do with it? What are we doing with it? I'm still trying to get in touch with some people. We'll see if anything ever happens. But it's shameful. And it's not the only one. Sanford, Florida is another one. New Orleans, Louisiana. We can go down the list. If you've seen 7 a.m., you see me give you the rundown. We got a lot more than just that.
It looks like in Atlanta, it's like the Asians just seem like they're just going to start dominating Atlanta the next 20 or 30 years. And it's like it's going to be Asians and whites, and black people are just going to be pushed out. And a lot of black people say, well, it's a chocolate city, black Mecca. But I'm like, what do you own and control? Do you control any construction? Do you control any of the media apparatus? Do you control the laws, the politics, the business, or anything? What do you control in Atlanta? And it's mainly controlled by white folks, but you have black faces in the front, which doesn't mean nothing. So
yeah, and what we have to do is we have to accept our position, brother. I don't run from the words elite. When people say that, you're an elitist, you're damn right. I am the elite. I'm elite like special forces. You doggone right I am. Nothing ordinary about what I do. And the people who want to be subservient, that's where they stay. But brother, we have to accept our position as leaders. and a leadership position. Now, that does not mean that I am a leader. What I'm saying is that we need to cultivate a culture of leadership where we have an ideal and an agenda, and people are going to adhere to that. But now we have to stop letting people tell us that leadership and being the elite is something bad, because they want you to say it's bad so that they can continue being deficient. And I'm not going to give any more leeway to people who are happy being deficient. If you're happy slaves toiling away on the plantation, fine, get the hell away from me. You can do that, but you can't stay around me. I'll let you have the last word.
Our community has been led by single mothers and a lot of women. And it's just like, and when you're put in a leadership position, you're supposed to take accountability, 100% accountability, responsibility for whatever goes wrong. And you always hear to talk about, well, it's the daddy's fault he's not here, well, I didn't have any help, well, I'm doing it by myself, but you are in the leadership position. You cannot blame anybody. You have to look at yourself. So it's just like, I'm not saying that, well, I'm just saying that I'm not trying to be mean or nothing, but it's just like women just cannot lead. Women can individually, but plural speaking, women collectively, no. And it's just like we're in a failed state, and people are just keep on just, ego stroking these single mothers, telling them that they're doing a good job when you don't look at the statistics, and we're just heading towards annihilation. And it's just like, even when we're heading towards annihilation, we just don't care. So thank you so much, Jason Black and Professor Black Trooper, accepting my call.
Thank you very much for joining us here tonight, brother. As always, Black first. Thank you. Let's see if we can try to take one more phone call here. Let me get caller from 404. You're on live with the Black Channel.
Hello?
Yes, you're on live.
Oh, hey. My name is Robert Bell, calling from Atlanta. And first of all, I want to thank you for what you do. You've given some real eye-opening broadcasts, and I do appreciate that. That being said, I have 3 questions. I want to know how you feel about franchising.
I don't see any problem with it. If you have the money and the means to do it, there's no problem with it.
Okay. Question number 2. Given the current state of Black affairs in regard to our economic situation, needing the economic power base, I mean, what is the real time frame that you foresee, with it being 2015, for us to turn this around?
Brother, as Black people, you all are not going to like what I'm going to tell you, but to be totally honest with you, I think we've entered the last century that white supremacy is going to lock down the next 500 years in the next 100 years. They've already locked down the previous 500. They're going to they are now putting the machinery in place, and I did this broadcast a couple of weeks ago, white supremacy the next 500 years. And all these things where you see it becoming more verbal, more virulent, more hostile, more violent, more overt. Exactly what they were doing when they were 50% and 60% of the population previously in the 1800s. They are reasserting themselves. And they are doing what's necessary to consolidate power on their behalf so that they can control the next 500 years. And what I'm saying is that the next 500 years is not going to be like the previous 500. They won't have a need for Black people this time around. They won't need a labor force, like an obsolete labor force, which is what Black people have become. They don't need that this time around.
Okay, that being said, so within the next century, next 100 years, given the fact that we make up, 13, 14% of the population, what percentage of that Black community would really have to be self-made entrepreneurs to where, we could offset, potentially what may be coming?
20%.
I'm just trying to get a.
Right now, our entrepreneurial rate is about 10%. It's about 2%. We need that to go hundreds of times over.
Okay.
We need to go from 2% to somewhere around 20. We need for somewhere around 1 of every 5 that to eliminate those outrageously broad degrees of separation. We're going to need a 20-fold increase from what we currently are today. Why? Because we are 20 times behind everybody else. In reality, I'd like to see a situation where it was 25%, but my estimates, we're going to need at least 1 out of every 5 of us, so that do you know how tight the degrees of separation would be between every black person and somebody who's a business owner? Well, that's what we need. We need it to be where there's only 1 degree of separation between you and another holder of capital. That's what we need.
Oh.
Because right now we got
one
6
more
and 7 degrees
It was brought
of
to my
separation.
attention that you have some type of training material in regard to aid entrepreneurs. Is that true? This is just what I heard. Like some of your broadcasts that are already posted on YouTube and whatnot. Is there some that you could point out or give me some titles to? Is that even true, first of all?
Yes, everything we do is. Every broadcast that we do deals with this subject more or less in depth. I couldn't sit here and tell you, well, which one in particular. We just did one. We talked to a fellow last week who was calling us about vending machines. I did the black business a black business workshop just last year, and done some more later last year and earlier this year. So I mean, like I say, what you can do is go to my YouTube channel, The Black Authority, or my newer channel, TBA. And, I mean, you can just start listing from there. We do this all the time. We do it all the time. But here's what you need to know, okay? If you want to start a business, being an entrepreneur starts with 3 things. First, you need the desire. If you don't want to be a business owner, then nobody's going to be able to help you. And by desire, I mean that you have to want to be a business owner the same way that the starving man wants food, the same way that the thirsty man wants water. You have to want it like a basketball player trying to get to the NBA. You have to want it like somebody who's trapped in a hole 1,000 feet underground. You have to desire it just that much. That nobody can break you or divert you from it. Second of all, you are going to need a goal. You can never accomplish anything if you don't actually know where you're going. You have to have a goal. Thirdly, you have to have a plan, a roadmap, a way you're going to get there. There's a reason why banks won't talk to you if you don't have a business plan. Venture capitalists won't talk to you if you don't have a business plan. The business plan shows them that you at least have some idea of a map of how to get where you're going. Without it, he understands you haven't really thought this over, or at least he has no proof that you have, and he's not going to give you money based on belief. He wants proof that you've actually thought this over, that there is actually a plan. Now, there's a 4th component after you have your plan. You are going to want to see about mentorship. Well, how do I get mentored? And I spoke to no less an authority than Donahue R. Peebles in our documentary 7 a.m., which we're completely sold out right now. We expect to have it restocked and going back out 2-disc set and PAL for our friends in the UK and Europe, available here after April 1st. So be on the watch out for that, because that will be talking to Don in depth on the DVD extras. But when you talk about being mentored, brother, you want to be mentored. Well, how do you get mentored? You get mentored by getting in the business. You talked about franchising. You want to be mentored about a franchise? What kind of franchise do you want to have? A burger franchise? Go put in your application to McDonald's. Wendy's. Go in there and go get intel. See how it's run from the inside. Everybody else is in there whining and complaining. You let them sit and whine and complain. You learn it from the top to the bottom, because those are the people that you're going to have to hire for your franchise, and you want to know how to eliminate troublemakers. Go watch and see what the current franchise owners are doing wrong, so when you have your operation together, you can do it right. If you want to go into any other type of business, telecommunications, cell phone service, go into the business. You get mentored in business by doing business. You learn by being a gopher. Now, once you do that, then you will be prepared to start executing plans. That's what you do if you don't have any information. You can get knowledge, but that's going to depend on how much knowledge you actually want to have.
Okay, I appreciate the insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining us here. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be doing something here. I wanted to announce this here before. Brothers and sisters, Dr. Claude Anderson has talked about this before, and he's mentioned this, and I've mentioned this before and everything, and I want to bring this to pass. I want to bring this to fruition. "7 a.m. has been a project that has done simply incredible things. If you had told anybody that you would have sold out theaters and lines down the street to see a documentary about black entrepreneurship, they would have laughed you the hell out the building. They would have laughed you out of town. But now that's exactly what we did. And tonight, I want to make the announcement that I'm looking to take it to the next level. What I want to do, what I'm going to do, not what I want to do, what will happen, whether I've got anybody else's support or not, what will happen is in no less than 2 cities, I want to get 2 large venues. And I'm talking about, up until now, projects like 7 a.m. and Hidden Colors and things like that, we've been in places where we dealt with people numbering in the hundreds. We kicked it up a notch with 7 a.m. and started communicating with people in the thousands. I want to take that even further now. I want to get a place that will hold several thousand people, and I think we're going to need that. And what I want to do is, for the first time ever, I want to have us have at least 2 to 3 major conventions where we can gather black people together for the sole purpose of everybody who shows up will be given the necessary starting tools that they need to be able to start being entrepreneurs and building their own economy for us as a people. I want to have chambers of commerce. I want to have bankers. I want to have business leaders. And most importantly, well, not most importantly, I also want to have realtors. People who can help you to relocate if you need to. People who can help you to move from wherever you are to wherever you need to be in these areas. You may have to catch a plane, you may have to catch a train, you may have to catch the bus, but it will be well worth your while because I want them to give you the necessary tools. I want to have a screening of 7 a.m. so that everybody there can see why this is important, and then I would like to enact it, maybe not 100% the way Dr. Claude Anderson said it, but pretty much roughly along those lines, because I've spoken about it before, is that we need to have it where black people can get personally mentored. Dr. Anderson's suggestion was that we gather together your top business leaders in the city on one side of the room and all the black folk who want to be in business on the other side. But I want us to do more than that. I want every single black person in that area, in that region, if you want to be a part of reestablishing a black Mecca in the United States that is totally and completely in the purpose and in the interest of black economic empowerment, if you want to create a black town in your area, because you got a Chinatown and a Greek town and a little Hialeah, if we want to make a new Nigeria, a new Egypt, I'm saying that this is the time to do that. There's no point in us talking about waiting until the right moment. This is the moment. And I'm going to invite a couple of keynote speakers, but it is imperative. It is absolutely imperative that we have all the necessary business leaders in place. We got to have your Chamber of Commerce, and we have got to have investors. We got to have bankers. And more importantly, you need your chambers of commerce, because one of the things when I spoke to, and I don't mind telling you all about this because you'll hear about it in depth on the 2-disc set of 7 a.m., which will be available here in a couple of weeks. You'll hear about it in depth. Shalimar Thomas, the executive director of the Philadelphia, New Jersey, Delaware African American Chamber of Commerce, she had mentioned that they actually have a program in Philadelphia at the African American Chamber of Commerce that they will guide you through the process of whether you want to be a they have 3 levels, which is individual, entrepreneur, and small business. They will take you through the process, and it's like a 6-month to a year-long course. And when they get done, they will have you ready to do your business plan. You'll have all the necessary training, and they will put you in touch with mentors and with sources of capital. And I very, very much want to do something like that, especially in that area. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. And I want to make it so that it's available for all of you. I want to make it so it's available for all of you. That if you're willing to come out for it, they can start that process. As a matter of fact, I want to say, I may not be 110% correct, but I want to say that the course that they offer is actually online, as a matter of fact. They even offer it online correspondence for it. So you can actually take the course online. And when you get done, they will sign off on your business plan. And they will take you to meet sources of capital so that they can see that you're not just some jackalope who walked in the front door, that you are somebody who is being endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce. They say that you did this and you've gone down the steps, and they'll take a look at your business plan. And after they take a look at it, they'll tell you that if there are places that you need to get stronger in, or things that you need to address, or other issues that need to be seen about, they will actually help guide you and steward you through the process of doing that. So we can stop spinning our damn wheels with a bunch of folk out here wishing and hoping and praying for stuff they ain't gonna get. And every year that you fail, you become more comfortable with being a failure. I want to do what nobody has ever done before. I want to gather not dozens and not hundreds. I want to gather thousands of black people together for the purposes of rebuilding black economic meccas, and I want to choose 2 or 3 places. And oh yeah, it ain't gonna happen next year. I want to do it within the next 3 calendar months, within the next 90 days. I want to do this within the next 90 days. I'll tell you right now, my front runners are Chicago, New York, DC, Philadelphia, Atlanta. Those are the 5 places that I'm really considering very heavily. We're going to winnow that down to about 2 or 3. Definitely 2, maybe 3. And I want to make this so that every black person, what we will need everybody else's help for out here is that you will have to help us get the word out. What we're going to need everybody else to help us with is to help make sure everybody is aware of this. When this gets started, you got to make sure that this is known in every hoot and holler, in every corner. Everybody everywhere has got to know about this and to know why it is essential. Because black people are being run out of California. You're being run out of Colorado. You're being run out of Las Vegas, Arizona. You're being run out of Nevada. You're being run out of the western states. You're being terrorized in the Northeast. And we need for black folk, if you're going to have an exodus, if you're going to have a migration, you need to migrate to a place. And more than anything, when we put the dollars together, along with those dollars must come the requisite code of conduct. That we are all here for the same purposes. But brothers and sisters, I told you that when 7 a.m. was done, that I might not do another project like 7 a.m. Why? Because I'm not really in the movie making business like that. I didn't do this so that I can make movies. I did this so I can make change. Now don't expect your happy hotep hoes and the Kunchas clowns to show up. Don't expect them to get involved with this. They'll be too busy over there in the corner rubbing their prayer beads and their crystals and licking their chakras. They'll be too busy over there doing that. But to the real black society, to real black people, all of the real Africans, are going to be doing this. All the real Africans are going to be engaged in this. And brothers and sisters, like I say, with 7 a.m., I just threw it out there. I didn't know what kind of response it was going to get. I threw it out there because it had to be done. And with this, it'll be the same thing. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I don't know how it'll be received. I don't know how people are going to take it. I do know that it must be done, and I do know that it will be done. And your part in this will be very, very plain. You will let everybody else that you know that this is the event, and not just that this is the event, that you are coming. Now, with 90 calendar days, you got plenty of time to save up your airline fare. You got plenty of time for that. You can come. I want to make it where you can come and actually meet people. That you can come to these places and actually meet them. And let's take a look at that. You have white economic influence coming back and cannibalizing Detroit. The housing is cheap and they're buying up everything in sight. Black folks should have been there to get that. Those are opportunities missed. That's the bad news. The good news is we still have a chance to turn this around somewhere, but that window is closing, and that's why I'm calling us together now. So I want to put together some events like that, and I want people to be there for it. And if you are confused, if you are concerned, if you don't know, if you're wondering, how do I open my own business? And it doesn't matter what the business is. It doesn't matter. I want to put this together so that you will be in touch with these people. If we don't like the way that the Black Chamber of Commerce is doing things, y'all Negroes need to show up so you can become members of it, so you can get it on the right foot and say, hey, you ain't doing enough. If we got black banks, for example, a Black Chamber of Commerce, we get thousands of black folks together. United Bank in Philadelphia, United should be the largest bank in America. United Bank should be the largest bank in America. Every black person in America should have an account at United Bank because that's a black-owned bank. Carver Credit Union, we ought to have accounts at those places because those are black-owned. And you will create your own economic structure. You'll create your own. Stop waiting around for other people to do that for you. Stop waiting for other people to sit up here and do that for you. That's not the reason. When you're sitting here and demanding that other people are sitting up here and going to finance your way, that other people are going to help hold things together for you. In the 21st century, brothers and sisters, we got to do for we. Now, you notice I didn't say you got to do for self. I said we have got to do for we. I said to you a year ago that the time for talk was over. And then I brought you 7 a.m. Well, brothers and sisters, the time for watching is over. Doing time is here. Now, if you want to get gamed up, if you want to get prepared, if you want to get locked and loaded, if you want to make those necessary contacts, we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that this is the place to be. And like I say, I'm not even really truly done with 7 a.m. yet, but we are moving right along. And we're going to go into the next thing. This will be your opportunity to be a part of that. And if you're wondering about moving, if you're wondering about going to a place where the climate will be more hospitable, we are going to build our own economy. And once we have our economy, brothers and sisters, we will then be able to, the leaders of that economy, and you will be able to choose whether or not you wish to be a part of the culture of leadership. The leaders of that economy are going to be able to choose whether or not certain people are going to be allowed. You will be able to choose the code of conduct. That's what you will be able to do. As leaders, now that you finally got that economy in place, you want to outlaw the clowns and frauds and sellouts and coonery and buffoonery. You want to do that? You need your economy in place. Once your economy is in place, you enforce the code of conduct. As the business leaders, you are the social leaders, and you are the ones who enforce the code of conduct. Social leaders don't enforce a code of conduct. Why? Because nobody actually needs them. But you do need your business leaders. And that's what all of you are going to be there for. The revolution starts here. Dr. Joseph Ben Yakanan, we are taking the message that you gave us into the future, and we will be unapologetic about it. Professor Black Truth, I'll let you have the last word.
At the risk of imposing on your time, Brother Authority, you just absolutely summed it up wonderfully. Time to take it to the next level. It is time to no longer be online. We're doing this offline. Somebody once asked me, what's the definition of economics? Economics is the system by which resources are distributed. Mastering economics means mastering a system by which you can have resources for you and your people. This ensures your survival and your prosperity. If you think that prayer is going to do it, you're wrong. And if you think that you're going to find a substitute, you're wrong. And if you think that you're going to be latching onto someone else's system, you are wrong. There is no more room for debate, no more room for discussion. I simply want to close by letting people know this, and this is something I'd like to get to next week. I was reading a book called Gideon's Spies. It talks about the rise of the Mossad. And in the early 20th century, the guys who those Eastern European Jews went to and found support from in Palestine, the guys who started the Irgun and the kibbutz and the Haganah, the guys who understood the importance of knowing what the Palestinians were up to and what the British occupiers were up to. It wasn't social leaders. It wasn't religious leaders. The chief rabbi had nothing to do with it. It was Jewish shopkeepers. And this is in one of the best written, best documented books about the rise of the Mossad. The Mossad started with businessmen who wanted to protect their shops from Palestinian hooligans. There's a lesson in that for you. Black first.
Brothers and sisters, we're not thinking about making it happen. We're going to make it happen. 7 a.m. was just the beginning. You can be a part of this also. Once again, I implore you, join us. You're going to be called, and we'll be waiting to see who answers. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the blackchannel.net radio. Thank you, Professor Black Truth, for joining us here once again. I am, of course, your host, the Black Authority. And until next time, brothers and sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future, Dr. Ben, is eternal.